When a phone rings late at night in a quiet house, most people check the number and let it go. But on a Tuesday evening in March 2024, Shaquille O'Neal, a man who has won 4 NBA championships, built a business empire worth over $400 million, and stared down the most feared players in the history of basketball without blinking, picked up a call from a number he didn't recognize. And it destroyed him. Not a trade, not a loss, not an injury or a lawsuit, or any of the things that have tested him over 52 years of living very publicly and very large. A phone call. 6 seconds of silence after he said hello. Then a woman's voice, a voice he had not heard in 18 years, spoke his name. Not Shaq, not Big Diesel, not any of the names the world gave him. His real name, the one only his mother uses when she means it. Shaquille. His whole body went stiff. He couldn't move. He couldn't speak. Because the voice on the other end of that phone belonged to a woman who walked out of his life in 2002 and never came back. A woman he has never talked about in any interview. A woman whose name does not appear in his autobiography. A woman who, after everything, the championships, the businesses, the television show, the doctorate, is still the one subject that Shaquille O'Neal, one of the most open and entertaining public figures alive, has never been willing to discuss. And she was calling him after 18 years of complete silence. But here is the part that nobody saw coming. It wasn't her voice that broke him. It was what he heard in the background. Behind her voice, coming from somewhere else in the house, another room, just out of reach, was a second voice, a young voice, not talking to him, not talking to her, just living its life in the background of a phone call, completely unaware that it was being heard, just humming a song. And that sound, that completely ordinary, completely unguarded sound of a young person humming in a back room on a Tuesday night, did something to Shaquille O'Neal that no defender in 19 NBA seasons ever managed to do. It made him lose his grip. The phone slipped from his hand, cracked against the tile floor of his kitchen in Windermere, Florida. And he stood there, 7 feet 1 inch, 325 pounds, 4 rings, a doctorate, everything. And he could not pick it up for a full minute. Because in those few seconds, before he even understood why, his body already knew. That voice in the background was connected to him in a way that would change everything he thought he knew about his own life. But to understand why that humming shattered the most dominant man in basketball history, you have to go all the way back to Newark, New Jersey. Back to a boy who grew up too big for every room he walked into, writing questions in a notebook under his bed, with a flashlight in the dark. Back to a college campus in Baton Rouge in 1989, where a girl sat in the upper deck eating a hot dog and didn't stand up when everyone else did. Back to a love story that started over coffee and powdered sugar and 4 hours of the most honest conversation two young people ever had, and ended with a door closing so softly that the quiet of it echoed for 32 years. And back to a secret, one that was kept for 18 years. One that lived in the background of his entire life, without him knowing it was there. One that a woman carried alone through every hard thing, through graduate school and single motherhood and a cancer diagnosis in January 2024, before she finally decided that running out of time means you stop waiting for the perfect moment and you dial the number. What she told him that night on the phone will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about this man. What he did in the 9 hours after she told him will show you exactly who Shaquille O'Neal really is, underneath everything the world put on top of him. And what happened when he finally came face to face with the source of that voice in the background, standing on a porch in North Baton Rouge, reaching out his hand, is the kind of thing that reminds you why human beings are worth paying attention to in the first place. Stay with us for the whole story, because the voice in the background had a name, and what that name means is something you are going to want to see all the way to the end. It is a Tuesday evening in March 2024. Shaquille O'Neal, 52 years old, 7 feet 1 inch tall, a man who once held the world in his palm, is sitting alone in the kitchen of his sprawling Windermere, Florida estate. The house is quiet, in the way that only very large houses can be quiet. His kids are grown. His business empire runs itself tonight. There is nothing demanding anything from him right now, which is its own strange kind of loneliness. His phone buzzes on the black granite countertop. Unknown number. Florida area code 407. He almost ignores it. He gets 100 calls a day from numbers he doesn't recognize. Agents, journalists, restaurant owners, people who got his number from someone who got it from someone else. He has learned to let most of them go. Almost. Something makes him reach for it. He picks up, says nothing at first, just holds the phone to his ear and waits. Then a woman's voice, a voice he has not heard in 18 years, speaks his name. Not Shaq, not Big Diesel, not Big Aristotle, or any of the names the world gave him. His real name, the one his mother uses when she means business, Shaquille. His body goes completely rigid. 6 seconds of silence pass between them. 6 full seconds, he will count them later, in the retelling, every single time. Then, from somewhere behind her voice, bleeding through from another room in wherever she is calling from, comes a sound, a voice. Young, unaware it is being heard, just humming, just a person humming a song in the background of an ordinary Tuesday evening. And that sound, that completely ordinary, completely devastating sound, does something to Shaquille O'Neal that no defender in 19 NBA seasons ever managed to do. It stops him cold. The phone leaves his hand. He does not throw it. He does not drop it in shock, exactly. His fingers simply open, slowly, without instruction, the way a hand opens when the brain has gone somewhere the body cannot follow. The phone falls, cracks against the tile floor. He does not pick it up for a full minute. He just stands there, in his quiet kitchen, in his enormous quiet house, and stares at the cracked screen glowing on the floor. This is the story of why. To understand why that phone call destroyed him, you have to understand where Shaquille O'Neal came from. Not the highlight reels, not the championships, the part before all of that. The part that never made the poster. Newark, New Jersey, 1980. Shaquille Rashawn O'Neal is 8 years old and already a problem. Not because he is bad, but because he is too much. Too tall, too loud, too hungry, too restless, too everything. He fills every room he walks into, not just physically but energetically. This enormous, electric, exhausting kid who needs more of everything than the world around him seems willing to give. His mother, Lucille O'Neal, works 2 jobs and loves him with the specific, ferocious love of a woman who has decided that her children will not be casualties of their circumstances. She is the fixed point of his entire world. Steady, immovable. The one constant in a life that moves around constantly. His biological father, Joseph Tony, is already gone. Not dramatically. That is the part people get wrong when they imagine it. There is no big fight, no memorable last day, no door-slamming exit. Joseph Tony just sort of fades, lost to the streets, to choices that carried him away from Shaq's life, before Shaq could even spell his own last name. The absence isn't dramatic. It is just quiet. Like a room with no furniture in it. You notice it every time you walk in. You notice it every single day, even when you stop talking about it. Especially then. Shaq notices it every single day. What saves him, and this is the truest thing in this entire story, is a man named Philip Harrison. Philip Harrison is a United States Army sergeant who marries Lucille when Shaq is still young. He is not a soft man. He is not a warm and fuzzy man. He is a man built from discipline, the way other men are built from wood or stone. But when he looks at this enormous, restless, fatherless boy, this kid who breaks chairs by sitting in them, and outgrows shoes in 6 weeks, and cries at night into a pillow because he doesn't know why his real father never calls. Philip Harrison does not see a problem. He sees a project worth everything he has. Philip Harrison's parenting philosophy is simple and, at times, brutal in its consistency. Discipline is love, and love is non-negotiable. He says this out loud. He means it all the way down. He moves the family constantly, following army assignments, Georgia, then Germany, then San Antonio, Texas. Each new city means a new school. Each new school means Shaq is the new kid. Again, the giant. Again. The one who walks through doorways sideways and sits in the back of every classroom because no one behind him can see the board if he doesn't. Again and again and again. But here is what the outside world never sees. At home, in whatever house they are living in that year, Shaq cries. He keeps a composition notebook under his bed. He writes in it with the lights off sometimes, using a flashlight, the way kids do when they need to say something they cannot say out loud. He writes about wanting a friend who doesn't move away when the assignment ends. About the specific humiliation of being 13 and too big for every desk in the school. About a father he has never met who is out there somewhere living his life like Shaq is not a fact of the world. He writes, why didn't he want to stay? He writes that question more than once. In San Antonio, at Robert G. Cole High School, a small school on a military base on the west side of the city, something finally finds him. Basketball. More accurately, basketball finds him. Coach Dave Madura sees a 6'6" freshman who cannot dribble without looking at the ball, cannot shoot with any consistency, and cannot pivot without sending someone into the bleachers like a car accident. He is raw in every sense of the word. But Madura has been coaching long enough to know that you cannot teach hunger. And this kid is starving. Madura calls Philip Harrison directly, gets him on the phone and says, your son could go all the way, but somebody has to stay on him every single day. Philip Harrison says, that won't be a problem. He is not exaggerating. He wakes Shaq at 5 a.m., runs drills in whatever driveway they have that year, rebounds for him in school gyms on Saturday mornings, when the building is empty and cold. When Shaq complains, and he does complain, he is a teenager, complaining is the language, Philip Harrison stops whatever he is doing and says the same thing. The exact same sentence, every time, without variation. Nobody will work harder for you than you. Remember that. Shaq will repeat that sentence in interviews for the next 40 years. He will say it on television. He will say it in speeches. He will say it to his own children. He will say it the way you repeat something when it has become load-bearing, when the thing you were told has become the thing holding you up. By his senior year at Cole High, Shaq is 6 feet 10 inches and still growing. He is averaging 32 points and 22 rebounds a game. He is being recruited by every major program in the country. His name is in sports columns. Coaches are flying to San Antonio just to sit in the Harrison living room and make promises. He chooses LSU, Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in 1989. He chooses it because of the coaching staff, because of the program's history, because of the facilities and the tradition and all of the reasonable, sensible things that a young man is supposed to weigh when making a decision this large. And partly, quietly, in a way he does not fully understand yet, because of a girl he noticed in the stands during a recruitment visit. A girl who was eating a hot dog and did not stand up. Her name is Arnetta Yardberg. He does not know her yet. He does not know her name yet. He does not know anything about her, except that she was the only person in the building who did not react when he brought the house down, and for reasons he cannot explain and will not examine. That one detail has been living in the back of his mind like a splinter ever since. He does not know that she will become the reason, 35 years later, that a phone call will bring him to his knees on a kitchen floor in Windermere, Florida. He does not know any of that yet. He is 17 years old. He is going to LSU. The world is just beginning to open its mouth. And for the first time in longer than he can remember, he is not thinking about basketball. That is the detail that tells you everything. Because basketball is the thing Shaquille O'Neal thinks about the way other people think about breathing. Automatically, constantly, without choosing to. It is the organizing principle of his entire existence at this point. Every meal is about basketball. Every hour of sleep is about basketball. Every morning at 5 a.m., with Philip Harrison in some driveway somewhere, was about basketball. The sport has been his language, his identity, his answer to every question the world has thrown at him since he was a gangly, fatherless kid in San Antonio who needed somewhere to put all that size and all that hunger. And tonight, walking back across the LSU campus with powdered sugar second-hand on his sleeve, from proximity to Arnetta Yardberg's coffee sleeve, he is thinking about a girl who told him the truth about himself, like it was the most natural thing in the world. He is, without fully realizing it yet, in serious trouble. They fall into each other slowly at first. Then all at once, the way things happen when two people are both too stubborn to admit what is already obvious. By November 1989, they are studying together 3 nights a week in the communications library. By December, they are spending Sundays at Arnetta's favorite spot, a bench along the LSU lakes, the long artificial waterway that cuts through the heart of campus, where she reads and he pretends to read and mostly watches the water and talks too much. And she pretends to be annoyed by his talking and mostly isn't. She helps him with his coursework. This is not a small thing. Shaq is brilliant. Genuinely, structurally brilliant, with a mind that moves fast and makes unexpected connections. But he is undisciplined on paper. He writes the way he plays, all force, no finesse. Arnetta reads his essays and hands them back with more red ink than original text, and a single note at the top that says things like, "You buried your actual argument under 6 paragraphs of throat clearing. Start here." He finds this infuriating and indispensable in equal measure. He meets her family at Christmas 1989, driving with her to Shreveport in a car that is comically undersized for him, his knees folded up somewhere near his chin for 3.5 hours, while Arnetta plays Sade on a cassette tape and refuses to change it. Regardless of his complaints, Roosevelt Yardberg shakes his hand at the door, looks up at him from a height disadvantage of nearly 2 feet, and says without any intimidation whatsoever, "You better not be one of those boys who's different at home than he is in public." Shaq says, "No, sir." Roosevelt holds the handshake 1 beat longer than necessary, then nods once. Good. Gloria Yardberg feeds him for 3 days straight and calls him baby, without irony, and cries a little when they leave, which Arnetta finds mortifying and Shaq finds quietly, completely wonderful. He has never been received like that before. Not as the basketball player, not as the prospect, just as a boy at a family's table. She meets Philip and Lucille at a home game in February 1990. Lucille O'Neal is a woman who reads people the way other people read books, quickly, thoroughly, and with perfect retention. She watches Arnetta at that game, watches the way Arnetta watches Shaq, not with the helpless, dazzled attention of someone watching a celebrity, but with the particular, grounded focus of someone keeping track of a person they are responsible for knowing. After the game, while Shaq is doing the endless post-game obligations that are already becoming the texture of his life, Lucille finds Arnetta near the tunnel entrance, takes her by the arm gently, pulls her 2 steps away from the noise, says, quietly, carefully, like she is handing something fragile across a table, "You're the first girl he's brought home who looks at him like he's a person." Arnetta doesn't know what to say to that. She nods. She holds on to it. She will hold on to it for the next 35 years. The first crack appears in the spring of 1991. Not dramatically, not all at once. The first crack never does. It comes the way water gets into old buildings, quietly, finding the small gaps, working its way in over time until one day you look up and the ceiling has changed shape, and you don't know exactly when it happened. Shaq has completed his sophomore year. He is no longer just a prospect. He is a phenomenon, a genuine one, the kind that comes along once in a generation and changes the scale by which everything else is measured. Sports Illustrated runs him on the cover in January 1991. He is the most talked-about player in college basketball, and with that comes something that nobody on the outside fully accounts for: the complete and total colonization of a person's life by their own legend. He cannot go to the grocery store, cannot go to the library, his and Arnetta's library, the communications one, their place, without a crowd forming within 4 minutes, cannot eat at a restaurant without the meal becoming an event. Every movement he makes on campus is observed, documented, reacted to. People he has never met feel entitled to pieces of him. His time, his attention, his autograph, his ear, his presence. He gives because he has always given, because Philip Harrison raised him to be generous, because it is genuinely part of who he is. But generosity has a cost when the demand is unlimited. And Arnetta, the woman who fell for him precisely because she could see the person underneath the performance, starts to feel the performance consuming the person. She notices it first in small ways. The calls that end earlier than they used to. The dinners that get canceled because something came up. Something always comes up now. Something is always more urgent than the thing in front of him. When they are together in public, she watches his eyes. Those large, restless, searching eyes, constantly moving around the room, not for danger, for the next thing, the next person who needs something, the next opportunity, the next version of himself that the world is asking him to be. She does not say anything for months. She is not a woman who says things before she is certain. She watches and waits and files information with the same careful precision she applies to everything, hoping she is wrong, hoping the pattern will break. It doesn't break. One night, in December 1991, they are sitting in his apartment off Nicholson Drive. A Tuesday, his supposed day off. A day he promised would be just them, and his phone has rung 4 times in 2 hours, and he has answered all 4 times, and she has sat on the couch with her tea going cold and her book open to the same page. She puts the book down when he finishes the 4th call. She says it quietly, no accusation in her voice. Just the plain documented truth, delivered the way her mother delivers hard things, like a fact of geography, like something the map has always shown. You're already gone, Shaquille. Your body is still here, but you've already left. He tells her she is wrong. He tells her he loves her, which is true. He tells her it is just the pressure of the season, which is also true, and also beside the point. And somewhere underneath his certainty he knows that. She nods. She believes him, or tries to, which is not the same thing, and both of them know it. Then April 1992 arrives, and the world tips on its axis. Shaq announces he is leaving LSU after his junior year to enter the NBA draft. It has been building for months. The whispers, the agent conversations, the very public consensus among every expert in basketball that he is ready, that staying would be almost economically irrational, that the NBA has been waiting for him with the patience of an institution that knows it is about to receive something historic. He tells Arnetta the night before the press conference. Not weeks before, not even days before. The night before, after every decision has been made, after the paperwork is moving, after the point at which her input could have changed anything at all. He comes to her apartment on Tuesday night and sits across from her at her kitchen table and tells her. She is very still for a long time. Then she asks, in the measured, careful voice of a woman controlling something enormous. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" He says, "It happened fast." He says the timing was complicated. He says he didn't want to worry her. She asks, "Was I part of the decision at all? Any part of it?" He opens his mouth, closes it. Because the honest answer, the answer that Philip Harrison's brutal commitment to truth would require, is that she was not. Not because he doesn't love her, not because she doesn't matter, but because somewhere in the past year, in the process of becoming Shaq, he has started making the large decisions in a room that only has one person in it. And he didn't notice the room getting smaller until just now. Sitting at her kitchen table, watching her face, he says, "I have to do this. This is my life." And Arnetta Yardberg, the girl from Shreveport, the third of 5 children, raised on the belief that your character is the only thing that truly belongs to you, looks at him across that table for a long, still moment. She looks at him the way you look at something you have loved carefully and completely and are now trying to memorize. Then she picks up her jacket from the back of the chair, picks up her keys from the counter, walks to the door. She does not slam it. That is the part that stays with him. Not a fight, not a dramatic exit. Just a door, closing softly in an apartment off Nicholson Drive in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, on an April night in 1992, while the oak trees outside do nothing and the world carries on with no acknowledgement whatsoever that something important has just ended. The soft click of that latch will live in Shaquille O'Neal's chest for the next 32 years. He thinks, in the weeks after, that it is over. Then it turns out it is not over. They are in the fractured, agonizing in-between of two people who cannot fully let go and cannot fully stay. Occasional calls through 1993, 1994. A letter in 1995 that takes him 3 days to respond to. A meeting in Orlando, his city now, the Magic City, his first NBA home, in the spring of 1995, where they sit in a Denny's on International Drive at 2 a.m. and talk for 4 hours, and cry in the parking lot afterward and agree, holding on to each other in the orange glow of the restaurant sign, that they are not good for each other right now. That phrase, right now, 2 words, doing the work of a decision, neither of them is brave enough to make completely. They part that night with the careful tenderness of people who know they are hurting each other and cannot stop. They will see each other once more after that. One more time, briefly, in the chaos of 2002. A year when everything in Shaq's life is in motion at once. The Lakers dynasty cracking at its foundation. His personal life reorganizing around new facts and new people. One evening, one conversation, one more parking lot, a different city, and then Arnetta Yardberg is gone. No fight this time, no final conversation with weight to it. No door, soft or otherwise. She is simply there, and then the calls stop, and the silence that follows is so complete and so absolute that after a while he stops being surprised by it and starts, without meaning to, building his life around its shape. He tells himself it is for the best. He tells himself it is for the best. He tells himself it is for the best. And here is the thing about telling yourself something for 18 years. You get very good at it. You build infrastructure around it. You fill the silence with noise, with achievement, with the kind of relentless forward momentum that looks, from the outside, like a man who has everything figured out. You become so skilled at the telling that you stop noticing it is still a telling, that the story you are running is still, underneath all its gold plating, a story about a door that closed softly on an April night in 1992 and never fully stopped echoing. But first, before the emptiness, comes the empire. And the empire is real. The empire is genuinely, historically, breathtakingly real. The Orlando Magic select Shaquille O'Neal with the first overall pick in the 1992 NBA draft. He is 20 years old. He signs a 7-year contract worth $40 million, the largest rookie contract in NBA history at that point, and arrives in Orlando like a weather event. Not a player, a weather event. The kind of force that changes the atmosphere of everything around it, simply by being present. His rookie season, 1992 to 1993, he averages 23 points and 13 rebounds per game. He is named to the All-Star team. He wins Rookie of the Year. He breaks shot clocks, not metaphorically, literally, physically breaks the mechanisms holding them to the stanchion, in games in New Jersey and San Antonio. The NBA quietly strengthens the shot clock supports at every arena in the league. This is a documented fact. The league changes its infrastructure because of one player's existence. He releases a rap album, Shaq Diesel, in October 1993. It goes platinum. He is not supposed to be able to do that. He does it anyway. He moves to the Los Angeles Lakers in 1996, in a trade that restructures the gravitational field of the entire Western Conference. In Los Angeles, he finds Kobe Bryant, 18 years old, ridiculous, destined, infuriating, perfect, and together they build something that the sport will argue about, and celebrate, and dissect for the next half-century. 3 consecutive NBA championships, 2000, 2001, 2002. 3 consecutive Finals MVP awards, a regular season MVP in 2000. Shaq at his peak, 2000, 2001, those 2 seasons specifically, is the most dominant force the sport has ever seen, not the most skilled, not the most decorated, the most dominant. There is a difference, and it matters. The numbers from those years read like a fever dream. 29 points, 13 rebounds, nearly 3 blocks per game, shooting 57% from the field, in the finals, against the best defenders the league could assemble. Opponents try everything. They foul him. They double-team him. They send 2 defenders, and sometimes 3. They change the rules. Actual NBA rules, amended specifically to slow him down, a strategy that comes to be called the hack-a-shock and becomes its own chapter in the sport's tactical history. None of it works, not really. In 2004, he moves to the Miami Heat. In 2006, aged 34, by the standards of NBA big men practically geological, he wins his 4th championship. His 4th. With Dwayne Wade beside him, in 6 games, against the Dallas Mavericks. He is Finals MVP again, at an age when most players his size are managing injuries and thinking about retirement. The sporting achievements are not the point of this story, but they matter as context, as the texture of the life he is building, because every championship, every record, every milestone adds another layer to the thing he is constructing around the quiet at his center. Achievement as architecture, accomplishment as insulation. He retires in June 2011. A press conference, a few chosen words. The end of a playing career that will place him, without serious debate, among the 5 greatest players in the history of the sport. His jersey is retired in Orlando, in Miami, in Los Angeles. 3 cities claim him. 3 cities hang his number in their rafters and tell their children, this is what once happened here. But 2011 is also the year his marriage to Shawnee Nelson ends. They have been married since 2002, the same year, in the same calendar, that Arnetta went quiet. They have built a family together that is large and real and genuinely loving, in the complicated, imperfect way that all real families are. 4 children together, Sharif, Amira, Shakir, Me'ara, alongside Miles and Tahira, his children from before. 6 children who grow up in the enormous, chaotic, loving orbit of Shaquille O'Neal. He is, by every account from the people who know him, a devoted and present father. He shows up. He drives to games and recitals and graduations. He sits in the front row. He embarrasses his children in the specific, enthusiastic way that fathers who love their children always do. The divorce is not bitter. It is sad in the way that the ending of something genuinely good is always sad. Not because anyone is villainous, but because two people who loved each other built a life that stopped fitting, and they are both honest enough to name it. After retirement, he becomes something rarer than a great athlete. He becomes a great businessman, and this part is worth slowing down for, because the world tends to underestimate it, tends to assume it is celebrity endorsement dressed up as commerce. It is not. He invested in Google before the company went public. Read that sentence again. Before it went public, when it was still a thing people were explaining to other people at dinner parties. He saw it, understood it, moved on it. That single decision, by itself, generates more money than most professional athletes earn in their entire careers. He buys into Auntie Anne's Pretzels franchises, then 24-hour fitness locations, then Papa John's Pizza, 9 stores initially, then more, then a Krispy Kreme donut franchise. He assembles a portfolio of brands and properties with the same systematic, relentless efficiency that Philip Harrison once applied to his basketball development. Nobody will work harder for you than you, he remembers. He applies it to everything. He joins the television desk at TNT's Inside the NBA, alongside Charles Barkley, Kenny Smith, and Ernie Johnson. The show is already the best studio program in sports. With Shaq, it becomes something else, a genuinely, consistently funny, warm, chaotic, brilliant piece of television that millions of people watch not for the basketball analysis, but for the 4 men being real with each other in front of a camera 3 nights a week. Charles says something outrageous. Shaq laughs until his chair is in danger. Kenny tries to be the reasonable one. Ernie holds it all together, with the patience of a saint. America loves it. America loves him. Not the player anymore. The person. The big, laughing, generous man who does magic tricks for children at hospitals and pays strangers grocery bills and shows up at people's houses when they post sad things online. In 2012, he receives a doctorate in education from Barry University in Miami. He is not joking, and he did not buy it. He wrote the dissertation. He defended it. He sat in the chair and answered the committee's questions, and earned the degree the way you earn degrees. With time and work, and the willingness to be wrong in front of people with more expertise than you. Dr. Shaquille O'Neal. He is genuinely proud of this. More proud some days than the rings. His net worth climbs past $400 million. Then higher. He is not a rich athlete. He is a wealthy man who also happened to be an athlete, which is a different category entirely, and the distinction is one he has worked hard to earn. And through all of it, the championships, the businesses, the television appearances, the honorary degrees, the philanthropy, the cultural omnipresence, the jokes, the magic tricks, the doctoral robes, the boardrooms and the arenas and the late-night television couches. There is a shape in his life that doesn't fill. It is not a dramatic absence. It is not something he discusses. It is not the kind of wound that shows up in interviews or in the careful, curated vulnerability of his public persona. He is not a man who performs sadness for attention. He keeps his real inventory private, but his adult children notice it. Sharif and Amira, who are old enough by their mid-20s to see their father with some of the accuracy that age and distance provide, notice that there are nights when the house is very large, and the trophies on the wall are just objects, and he is simply sitting somewhere being quiet in a way that is different from his ordinary quiet. His closest friends, and Shaq keeps a small inner circle, genuinely small, the kind of circle that takes decades to build and admits almost no one. Notice it too. They describe it in different ways when they try to put language to it. One says, it is like a man who learned to live in a house with a room he never opens. Another says it is simpler than that. It is just the specific loneliness of a person who has been seen by millions, and known by very few. He dates. He has relationships over the years, some public, some not. He is reported to be close with various women. Nothing settles in the particular way that the thing in the center of his chest needs something to settle. He does not talk about Arnetta, not in interviews, not in his 2011 autobiography, which is candid about nearly everything, not on the television show where he talks about almost everything, where he has discussed his father and his childhood and his marriage and his fears with an openness that most public figures never approach. There is a list of approximately 3 subjects that Shaquille O'Neal, a man who has made radical openness into an art form, has never addressed on the record. She is one of them. She is, in fact, at the top of that list. And if you have spent enough time studying a person to know what they avoid, you know what that means. The things we will not say out loud are always the things that still have the most power over us. Always. Without exception. Which is why, on a Tuesday evening in March 2024, when a phone buzzes on black granite and an unknown 407 number lights up the screen, something moves in Shaquille O'Neal's body before he has consciously processed a single thought. Not recognition, not memory. Something older and less rational than either of those things. Something that has been waiting, in a room he never opens, for 18 years. He reaches for the phone, and Arnetta says his name, and from somewhere in the background, from another room in wherever she is, bleeding through the line, comes a young voice, humming, unaware that anyone can hear it. Humming the way people hum when they are alone and think they are safe and have no idea that somewhere 600 miles away, in a kitchen in Windermere, Florida, a man they have never met is hearing their voice for the first time and losing his grip on everything. The phone falls. The floor is cold tile. The crack runs across the screen like a fault line. And Shaquille O'Neal stands in the silence of his enormous house and understands, with a clarity that 52 years and 4 championships and a doctorate and $400 million have done absolutely nothing to prepare him for, that the room he never opens has just opened itself. The crack runs across the screen like a fault line. And Shaquille O'Neal stands in the silence of his enormous house and understands, with a clarity that 52 years and 4 championships and a doctorate and $400 million have done absolutely nothing to prepare him for, that the room he never opens has just opened itself. He stands there for a full minute. 60 seconds is a long time to stand still when your body is telling you to move. When every instinct you have built over 5 decades of being the largest, most physically capable person in any room you have ever entered is screaming at you to do something, to react, to respond, to meet the moment with the force that moments require. He stands still anyway. He is looking at the cracked phone on the tile floor the way you look at something that has just rearranged the furniture of your entire interior. Life. The screen is still lit. The call is still connected. He can see the timer counting upward in the crack-fractured display. 38 seconds. 39. The call is still live. She is still there, on the other end, in whatever room she is calling from, with that voice humming in the background behind her. He bends down. The slow, deliberate movement of a very large man being careful with something, and picks the phone up from the floor. He puts it back to his ear. She is still there. He can hear her breathing, steady and measured, the way Arnetta Yarborough has always done everything, with a composure that is not coldness, but is the opposite of it. That is, in fact, the product of feeling things so deeply that you learn to build a container for them or be destroyed by them. He recognizes that breathing. It is one of the first things he memorized about her in a cafe on Highland Road in 1989, 35 years ago. He says her name again. Not a question this time. Arnetta. A statement. A confirmation. The word of a man making sure the ground is real before he puts his weight on it. She says, "I'm here. I'm still here." In the background, still there. still completely unaware of what it is doing to the man on the other end of this call. The voice hums, just a few bars, then stops, then starts again on a different part of the song. Shaq's jaw tightens. He moves to the kitchen table, his large, round kitchen table in the Windermere house, the table where he eats alone most evenings now, where he reads contracts and watches film and does the 1,000 small administrative tasks of being an empire of one. And he sits down in a chair that accommodates him the way very few chairs do. He needs to be sitting for this. He knows that much. He says, "Are you okay?" It is his first instinct and his truest one. Not "Why are you calling?" Not "Where have you been?" Not any of the 1,000 things that 18 years of silence could reasonably produce in a person who has been carrying that silence like a stone in his chest. The first thing, the thing that comes before strategy or self-protection, or any of the armor a famous, wealthy, careful man assembles around himself over decades, is just, "Are you okay?" Arnetta is quiet for 3 seconds. Then she says, "I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you a long time ago." Her voice is calm. He can hear the structure in it, the way she has organized this, the way she has clearly rehearsed the shape of it, if not the exact words. Arnetta always did that. Always came to hard conversations with an outline, a sequence, a beginning and a middle and an end. It used to make him feel safe. It used to feel like being in the hands of someone who knew where they were going. Right now it makes his heart rate do something that no Game 7, no finals pressure, no courtroom or boardroom or television camera has ever managed to do to it. He says, "Okay." Just that. He gives her the space. She takes a breath. He hears it. That same steady, constructed breath. She says she has thought about this call for a long time. She says she has written it down. She has actually written it out on paper, and thrown the paper away, and come back and written it again, more times than she is going to admit. She says she has started to dial his number. She has had his number, she explains, without elaborating on how, and he does not ask, because it doesn't matter, because she has it, and she used it, and that is the only fact with weight right now. She says she started to dial it dozens of times over the past several years and stopped. Every time stopped. She says she is not calling to cause pain. She needs him to hear that first. She is not calling to revisit anything, to assign blame, to resurrect what was or mourn what wasn't. She is calling because she is running out of time to do the right thing, and the right thing, and the comfortable thing stopped being the same option a while ago, and she has always, even when she failed at it, tried to choose the right thing, running out of time. He catches those words and holds them separately from the rest of the sentence, turning them over, examining them from different angles the way you examine something you are not sure is dangerous yet. He starts to ask what that means, and then the voice in the background does something specific. Up until this moment, it has been formless humming, melodic, unconscious, the sound of a person living their life in the background of someone else's phone call. But now, for just a few seconds, it becomes actual words. A fragment of lyrics. Not loud, just conversational volume. The way you sing to yourself when you are puttering around a room, when you have forgotten that sound travels. The song is Missy Elliott's "Get Her Freak On," a song from 2001. A song that was everywhere that summer. In cars, in clubs, in dormitories, on every radio station in America regardless of format. Inescapable and infectious and perfect. And the voice singing it, this young voice, this voice from somewhere in the next room of wherever Arnetta is calling from, is doing something to Shaq that he cannot yet name and will spend the next several hours trying to. It is not the song. He has heard that song 10,000 times. It is not even the voice exactly, though the voice is doing something specific and impossible to his nervous system. It is the combination of the two, the particular quality of that voice on that song in that moment, the casual, unself-conscious way of it, the tone and the pitch, and the specific resonance of it in the low register when the lyric drops. He knows that voice. He does not know how he knows it. He has never heard it before in his life. But his body knows it the way bodies know things that the mind hasn't caught up to yet. The way you recognize a place you have never been. The way you know a word in a language you were never taught. It sounds like him. Not kind of like him. Not a passing tonal resemblance that you could explain away with a reasonable argument about acoustics or imagination or wishful pattern recognition. Like looking in a mirror at a version of himself he has never seen. Younger, lighter, unformed in the specific ways that 21 years old is always unformed. But the bones of it, the fundamental structure underneath the sound, his hand opens. He is not aware of deciding to open it. The decision happens below the level of consciousness, in some part of him that has already understood what his mind is still refusing to process. His fingers simply release their grip on the phone, with the slow, deliberate inevitability of something that has been holding on too long, finally, letting go. The phone falls, the second time in 4 minutes. The same phone, the same floor. The same crack across the screen widening slightly on impact, a hairline becoming a fault line becoming a fracture, the way all cracks eventually do when you keep dropping things on them. He does not move for 60 seconds. He counts them. Later he will not be able to explain why he counts them. Perhaps because it is the only thing his mind can do that requires no interpretation, no response, no understanding of what is happening, just numbers. Just one following another, just the simple, reliable sequence of time continuing to pass, regardless of what it is passing through. At 58 seconds, he bends down and picks up the phone again. He calls her back. She answers on the first ring, as if she was holding the phone in both hands, waiting. As if she knew he would call back in under a minute. As if she knows him, which, he thinks, with the strange calm of a man on the other side of shock, she does. She always has. Better and more completely than almost anyone. He sits back down at the kitchen table. He does not pace. He does not stand. He sits with the solidity of a man who needs something beneath him right now, who needs to feel the chair and the floor and the specific gravity of the actual physical world. He asks one question. His voice, when it comes out, is so quiet that it barely sounds like his own. It is stripped of everything, the performance, the bravado, the enormous laugh, the carefully constructed public Shaq that 30 years of fame have built into the default register of his voice. What comes out is just the boy, just Newark, just the kid with the notebook under the bed who wrote, "Why didn't he want to stay with a flashlight?" The dark. Arnetta. How old? 2 words. The most important question of his life, delivered in 2 words, because 2 words is all he has. She tells him. The name first. Marcus Deron Yardborough. Then the age. 21 years old. Born May 17, 2003. At Woman's Hospital in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. At 6:43 in the morning, 7 pounds and 11 ounces. With his mother's jaw, and his mother's eyes, and his father's hands. His father's hands. Shaq does not speak for a long time after she says the age. He is doing arithmetic, not the complex, institutional mathematics of his business empire, the simple, devastating arithmetic of a calendar. 21 years old in May 2003 means conception in the summer of 2002. The summer of 2002. The summer of the last time, the Orlando night. The Denny's on International Drive. The parking lot with the orange light and the careful, terrible tenderness of 2 people saying, "Not right now," like it was a weather delay rather than a closing door. The numbers land exactly where he knew they would land before he finished counting. He closes his eyes. The kitchen is completely silent except for the sound of the refrigerator, a low, mechanical hum that he has never noticed before in all the time he has lived in this house and now cannot stop hearing, now that it is the only sound in the world. He says, "Why?" Just that. Not angry, or not only angry, not yet. The anger will come later in the night, in private waves, that he will ride out alone in this kitchen, this same kitchen, until 4 a.m. But in this moment the question is purely genuine. He needs to understand. He has always needed to understand things, has always been constitutionally incapable of accepting the fact of something without also demanding its architecture. Why? And Arnetta, who was raised to believe that your character is the only thing that truly belongs to you, who is calling now precisely because she has decided to put her character above her comfort, tells him. She starts at the beginning, October 2002. A test in a pharmacy bathroom in the Broadmoor neighborhood of Baton Rouge, the CVS on Uri Drive, a Tuesday morning when she called in sick to work and sat on the bathroom floor of her apartment for an hour afterward just breathing. She was 31 years old. She had a life she had built carefully and alone. Her graduate degree in social work almost finished. Her small apartment, her routines, her dignity, her mother's voice in her head saying, "Character is the only thing that belongs to you." She found out about Shawnee Nelson in the newspapers. She read about the engagement. Shaq and Shawnee, the woman he had been seeing through the complicated, overlapping geography of his personal life during those years. The announcement was November 2002. She saw it on the cover of a magazine in the checkout line at the same CVS. She is not sure whether to be grateful or devastated by the specificity of that detail, and has never decided. She says she thought about calling every day for 2 months. She says she sat with her phone and his number, and the knowledge that she was carrying something that belonged to him too, something that changed the entire geometry of every decision either of them might make, and she made a choice. She says she told herself it was the right choice. She says she told herself she was protecting everyone. Protecting Shaq from an obligation he didn't choose. Protecting Shawnee from a complication she didn't deserve. Protecting the baby from the unstable orbit of a situation with too many competing gravities. She says she told herself all of this very convincingly, for a very long time. She pauses. Then she says, "I was also protecting myself from having to find out if you would choose me. I couldn't survive knowing the answer if it was no, so I made the decision before you could." The kitchen is still. The refrigerator hums. Shaq sits with that truth, the real one, the one underneath the other ones. And he does not say anything for a while, because there is nothing to say that won't be inadequate. She has just handed him the most honest thing he has ever been handed by another person, and the only response equal to it is silence. Then, from the back of wherever she is calling from the bedroom or the living room, or some other ordinary room in a house in Baton Rouge, where a 21-year-old boy has come home early from his college recording studio because equipment broke down, the voice begins humming again, quietly, to itself, unaware, and this time Shaq just listens to it. He listens to it the way you listen to something you have been hearing your whole life, in a frequency you couldn't quite catch, some signal at the second edge of your range that you always knew was there and could never quite tune to. His son's voice, humming in the background of a phone call, on a Tuesday evening in March 2024, in a house he has never been to, in a life he has never been part of. He listens until the humming stops. Then he says, "Tell me everything," and Arnetta does. She starts not with Marcus, not with the boy, not with the facts of his existence and his life and the 21 years of it that Shaq has missed, but with herself, with the woman she was in October 2002 when she sat on a bathroom floor in Baton Rouge and held a pregnancy test with both hands and understood that her life had just divided itself into a before and an after, with no consultation from her whatsoever. She was 31 years old. She had spent her 20s building something careful and solid, and genuinely hers. After LSU, she had gone back to Shreveport for 2 years, worked at a community nonprofit, watched her father come home from the paper mill every night, with the same quiet dignity he always carried, and understood something important about the value of a life that belongs completely to itself. Then she had returned to Baton Rouge for graduate school, a master's degree in social work at Southern University, the large, historically black university on the north side of the city, a place that suited her in ways that LSU, with all its noise and grandeur, never quite had. She had her own apartment on Scenic Highway, North Baton Rouge, small, organized the way her mother organized things, with intention, with everything in its place, with no space wasted and no corner left unconsidered. She had a caseload of families she worked with through the East Baton Rouge Parish Social Services Office. She had her church, Greater New Hope, like home, a different congregation but the same songs. She had Denise Arsenault, her roommate from LSU, who had married a man named Terrence and lived 20 minutes away and came over on Sunday afternoons to eat and talk and argue about things didn't matter and some things that did. She had a life, a real one, small by some people's accounting and exactly the right size by hers. And she had, still, quietly, undiscussed, filed in the same place she filed things that were too large to look at directly. Whatever it was that Shaquille O'Neal had always been to her, not a fantasy, not a nostalgia, something more structural than either of those things. The standard, maybe. The measurement she didn't choose to use but used anyway. The voice that said, "This isn't it," to every other person who came along. Not with cruelty, but with simple, irrefutable accuracy. When she found out she was pregnant, she was terrified, and she was certain, and she was alone, in that bathroom for a long time. She tells Shaq all of this, slowly, without editorializing, the way a social worker tells a story, with the facts given their full weight, with no details skipped because it is uncomfortable, with the understanding that the complete truth is the only version that can actually help anyone. She tells him about the November morning she saw the engagement announcement. She had gone to the CVS on Uri Drive to buy prenatal vitamins. Her first box, a specific and permanent landmark in her memory. And the magazine was there in the checkout line with his face on it and a headline about a wedding. And she stood in that line with prenatal vitamins in one hand and read it and understood that the geography of the decision she was already making had just shifted permanently. She is not telling him this to assign blame. She says this explicitly. She says it twice. She is telling him because he asked for everything, and everything includes the context in which she made the choice she made, and she will not sanitize the context to make herself look better or to make him feel worse. That is not who she is. It has never been who she is. She made the choice, she says, for all the reasons she told him earlier. The protection of everyone, the complexity of the situation, the specific terror of finding out the answer to a question she had been not asking for years. And she made it, she says, with the full knowledge that it was hers to make and hers to live with. She has lived with it. For 21 years she has lived with it, and she has not once, in all that time, fully made her peace with it. She has been a good mother. She says this not with defensiveness, but with the calm confidence of a woman who has documented evidence. Marcus has been her entire architecture. Everything she built after October 2002, she built around him and for him. Not in the suffocating way that turns children into emotional hostages, but in the solid, foundational way that gives a child somewhere to stand while he figures out who he is. She tells Shaq about the early years. Marcus as an infant, enormous from the beginning, in the 99th percentile for height at every single pediatric checkup, which made his pediatrician laugh and made Arnetta's heart do complicated things every time. Marcus at 3 years old, already the tallest child at his preschool, at his Truma Baptist Church on North Acadian Thruway, already leading with his hands the way large people do, already possessing that specific physical authority that big people either learn to own or spend their lives apologizing for. She tells him about the questions that started at age 5, the ones she had prepared for and dreaded in equal measure. "Where is my daddy?" asked first at a birthday party for a classmate, Marcus looking around at the other children's fathers holding balloons and running three-legged races, and turning to Arnetta with the direct, uncomplicated gaze of a 5-year-old who has not yet learned that some questions are complicated. She had a plan for this. She had written it out, actually, in the same way she would later write out the phone call she was going to make. Sitting at her kitchen table when Marcus was still in her belly, preparing her answer the way you prepare a legal brief, knowing cross-examination is coming, and wanting to be ready. She told him that his father was a man who loved him, but whose life went in a different direction before Marcus was born. She told him that sometimes people who love each other can't be in the same place at the same time, and that it has nothing to do with whether they are worth loving. She told him that he had a mother who was not going anywhere. Ever. Not for anything. Marcus looked at her for a long moment at that birthday party, holding a juice box, processing. Then he nodded once. The same nod, Arnetta says with a catch in her voice. The exact same single nod that Roosevelt Yardborough gives when he has received information and filed it. Went back to the three-legged race. He asked again at 7. At 9. At 12, the questions got more specific and harder, and she answered them with the same framework, expanding it as his capacity to understand expanded, walking the precise and difficult line between protecting him and deceiving him. She never told him who. She tells Shaq this, and then sits with it for a moment, letting him sit with it too. She never said the name, never pointed at a television and said that man, that one, the one laughing on the TNT set. Marcus grew up in a house where Shaquille O'Neal existed as a cultural fact. On television, in sports history, in the general atmosphere of American life, without knowing he was anything more personal than that. Except, and here Arnetta's voice changes slightly. Not breaks. Arnetta Yardborough's voice does not break, it is not constructed for breaking, but shifts, moves into a register that is quieter and more unguarded than anything she has said so far. She tells Shaq that she played his music for Marcus when he was small. Not the basketball footage, not the highlight reels. The music. Shaq Diesel. The 1993 album, platinum certified, the one that nobody was supposed to take seriously and everybody ended up knowing by heart. You Can't Stop the Rain, from 1996. She played them in the apartment on Scenic Highway when Marcus was an infant and she was exhausted and needed something that felt familiar, something that connected the present to a time when she still knew what she was doing. She played them, she says, because she loved them, because they were genuinely good and genuinely funny, and because hearing them made her feel, in the difficult and lonely early years of single motherhood, less alone in a way she didn't examine too carefully, because examining it would have required her to admit things she wasn't ready to admit. And Marcus, who has been interested in music since before he could speak in complete sentences, who has been pulling apart songs and putting them back together in his head his entire life, who is currently in his junior year at Southern University studying audio engineering on a partial academic scholarship, grew up hearing those sounds without knowing what they were connected to. He developed, Arnetta says, an almost instinctive attraction to that era of music. Early 90s hip-hop, the Baton Rouge sound specifically, where Cash Money was just beginning and the whole sonic landscape of Southern rap was inventing itself in real time. He gravitates toward it in his production work, samples it, studies its architecture. He has been walking toward his father's world his entire life and never knew why. She stops talking for a moment. Outside the window of wherever she is, Shaq can hear something. Nighttime in Baton Rouge, the specific sound of it, which he remembers from his own years there, crickets and distant traffic on I-110, and the occasional sound of music from a neighbor's house, that gentle subtropical nighttime noise of a city that never goes entirely quiet. He asks her again, gently, because he needs the full shape of it. Why now? Why March 2024? Why, after 18 years of silence, this particular Tuesday evening? And Arnetta tells him the last piece of it. 2 months ago, January 2024, she went to her doctor at Our Lady of the Lake Regional Medical Center on Hennessy Boulevard in Baton Rouge, with symptoms she had been managing and minimizing and explaining away for the better part of 6 months, the way busy people manage and minimize things that frighten them. Fatigue, pain in her abdomen that she attributed to stress, weight loss that she attributed to the dietary changes she'd been making since her 42nd birthday. The diagnosis came back stage 3 ovarian cancer. She says it plainly. The way she says everything, without dramatics, without the emotional scaffolding that the word usually arrives with. Just the fact of it, placed on the table between them like a document that requires signatures. Her oncologist, Dr. Patricia Fontenot, a woman Arnetta describes as the most direct and simultaneously compassionate person she has ever met in a professional context, which is saying something given Arnetta's profession, has told her that stage 3 is serious and that they caught it at a point where treatment is meaningful, and the prognosis is cautiously, genuinely optimistic. She is in chemotherapy. She is responding. The numbers are moving in the direction you want numbers to move. She is going to fight this, she says, and she intends to win it. And she has not called Shaq tonight because she is dying. She wants that to be absolutely clear. She is not making a deathbed confession. She is making a living confession, the harder kind, the kind that requires you to still be present for the consequences. But the diagnosis made her look at her life with the specific, clarifying focus that serious illness forces on a person. Made her take an inventory of what was finished and what was not. Made her walk through every room of her life, including the room she had locked in 2002, and quietly built a wall in front of and told herself, for 21 years, was no longer a room at all. Marcus does not know, not yet. She has told her mother, her sister Celeste, Denise. She has not told Marcus because she is still deciding how. Because she is a woman who does not deliver hard news without a plan, and she has been working on the plan. But the cancer made one other thing clear. One thing that the plan, whatever shape it finally takes, must include. He deserves to know his father, she says. Her voice is steady and certain, and completely without self-pity. The voice of a woman who has made a decision and is now executing it. Before something happens to me, whether something happens or not, he just deserves to know. I should have done this years ago. I'm doing it now. She pauses. I'm asking your permission before I tell him. You deserve that much. I owe you the chance to decide how you want to handle it before it's out of my hands. The kitchen in Windermere is very still. Shaq is sitting at the round table with the cracked phone pressed to his ear, and his other hand flat on the granite surface. The way you press your hand to something solid when you need to confirm that solid things still exist. He is thinking about Philip Harrison. He is thinking about a boy in Newark with a notebook under his bed writing, "Why didn't he want to stay?" He is thinking about a door that closed softly in 1992 and a parking lot in 1995, and 18 years of silence shaped like a room he never opened. He is thinking about a voice humming "Get Freak On" in the background of a phone call, unaware that it was being heard, unaware that its sound was doing something irreversible to a man 600 miles away on a kitchen floor in Florida. He is thinking about his son, Marcus Duran Yardberg, 21 years old, 6 feet 4 inches and still growing, Arnetta says. Audio engineering student. Pick up basketball Tuesdays and Thursdays. His mother's eyes, his mother's stubbornness, his father's hands. Your exact hands, Shaquille. I've looked at those hands his whole life. He breathes in, out, once, twice. He thinks about what it would mean to say no, to say he needs time, to say the situation is complicated and he needs to consult people, lawyers, advisors, publicists, the apparatus of careful management that surrounds a man of his profile and protects him from the uncurated impact of his own life. He thinks about it for approximately 4 seconds. Then he thinks about a 5-year-old boy at a birthday party holding a juice box and asking where and his father is, and his mother telling him it has nothing to do with whether you are worth loving, and that boy giving one single nod and going back to the 3-legged race. One nod, carrying that answer his entire life with one nod. Shaq closes his eyes, opens them, looks at his hand flat on the granite, his father's hands, his son's hands, the same hands, separated by 21 years and 600 miles, and a choice made on a bathroom floor that he had no part in making and no power to unmake. He says, tell him everything, and tell him I'm coming to Baton Rouge. The line is quiet for a moment. When Arnetta speaks again, her voice has changed. Just slightly, just enough. The structure is still there, the composure, the careful construction, but underneath it, for just a second, something surfaces that sounds like the 19-year-old girl who sat in the upper deck of the Pete Maravich Assembly Center eating a hot dog and didn't stand up. Something young and relieved and terrified and real. She says, he already knows your name, Shaquille. I made sure of that. He sits with that for a long time after the call ends. He sits in the kitchen in Windermere, Florida, with the cracked phone on the table and the refrigerator humming and the enormous house quiet around him. And he sits with the specific, staggering weight of what it means that a woman who owed him nothing, who had every reason and every right to keep the wall in front of that room forever, had spent 21 years making sure that when this moment finally came, his son would already know his name. It is the most generous thing anyone has ever done for him. It is also the thing that finally, completely, breaks him open. He puts his head in his hands. And Shaquille O'Neal, Big Shaq, Big Diesel, Big Aristotle, the most dominant player in the history of the sport, Dr. O'Neal, the man with 4 rings and a doctorate and $400 million and a laugh that fills every room he enters, sits in his kitchen at 11 p.m., a Tuesday in March 2024, and weeps. Not for what was lost, or not only for that, for what is, impossibly, still here. He cries the way men who have spent their entire lives being the biggest person in every room cry when they finally stop performing bigness. Not loudly, not with the release of someone who cries easily and often, but with the effortful, almost reluctant grief of a person for whom this is an unfamiliar country. His shoulders shake, his breath comes in uneven intervals. He presses the heels of both hands into his eyes, like he is trying to hold something in, and then gives up trying, because you cannot hold in what has already arrived. He cries for approximately 4 minutes. Then he stops, wipes his face with both hands, sits up straight in the chair, breathes. This is what Philip Harrison taught him, not to avoid breaking, but to break cleanly and then reassemble. You are allowed to fall apart, Philip used to say, but you do it on your own time, and then you get back to work. Grief is not an excuse. Grief is information. Use it. He uses it. He picks up the cracked phone, calls his sister Ayesha, not a publicist, not Dennis Tracy, his longtime business manager who has navigated every complicated situation of the past 20 years with the calm efficiency of a man who has seen everything, not a lawyer, not any of the infrastructure of careful management that a man of his profile assembles around himself over decades, precisely for moments when the uncurated reality of his own life arrives without an appointment. His sister. Because there are moments when the only right call is to the person who knew you before you were anything. Aisha O'Neal picks up on the second ring. It is nearly midnight. She does not say, "Do you know what time it is?" She says, "Talk to me." He talks. He tells her everything. The phone call, the voice in the background, Arnetta's name, The arithmetic of the calendar, Marcus. He tells it in order, which takes effort, because his mind is not moving in order right now. His mind is moving the way it moved in elimination games, in all directions simultaneously, processing multiple threats and opportunities at the same time, unable to settle on a single line of attack. Aisha listens without interrupting. This is her gift. She has always been able to hold space for the large, complicated things her brother carries, without trying to immediately fix them, or reframe them, or make them smaller so they are easier to handle. She just holds them with him. When he finishes, she is quiet for a moment. Then she asks, in the direct and loving way of a woman who has known this man his entire life, Shaquille, set everything else aside. Set Arnetta aside, and the years and all of it. There is only one question. Do you want to know your son? The answer, he realizes, was never in question. It was decided the moment he heard the voice. Maybe before that. Maybe it was decided in a Denny's parking lot in 1995 when he held on to Arnetta in the orange light and thought about futures he wasn't brave enough to claim. Maybe it was decided in Newark when he was 8 years old and understood, in the wordless way that children understand the things that will shape them forever, what it means to be a boy without a father in the room. He says, I've wanted to know him since before I knew he existed. Aisha says, then that's the answer. Everything else is just logistics. He thanks her. She tells him to call her in the morning. He says he will. They both know he will not sleep between now and then. He doesn't. The night moves through him in stages, the way long, difficult nights always do. Not as one continuous experience, but as a series of separate rooms, each with its own atmosphere and its own demands. The first room is anger. It arrives about 20 minutes after he ends the call with Aisha, settling into the kitchen chair with the patience of something that has been waiting for its turn. Not rage. He has always been careful about rage, has understood from a young age that a man his size, expressing rage, is a different category of event than most people expressing rage, and has disciplined himself accordingly. But anger, real, clean, justified anger. 21 years. A boy, his boy, grew up without him for 21 years. Grew up asking where his father was and receiving a carefully constructed answer that was true in its way, but incomplete in the way that mattered most. Grew up in the same city where Shaq went to college, walking the same streets, breathing the same subtropical Louisiana air, living a life that Shaq had no knowledge of and no chance to contribute to because a decision was made on a bathroom floor in October 2002 that he had no part in. He is angry at Arnetta. He lets himself be angry at her fully and without qualification for about 15 minutes, which feels important. Feels like something he owes to the 21 years, like a debt that needs to be acknowledged before it can be properly understood. And then, because he is constitutionally incapable of holding a position without examining it from every angle, he moves into the second room. The second room is honesty. He sits in it, and he asks himself the question he has been avoiding since the phone call ended. If Arnetta had called him in October 2002 and told him she was pregnant, what would he have done? He was 30 years old. He was at the peak of his basketball career, in the middle of a dynasty, in the complicated wreckage of a personal life that was reorganizing around new people and new circumstances. He was becoming Shawnee's husband. He was, by his own account and several other people's accounts, not yet the man he would eventually become, not yet the version of himself that Philip Harrison's sacrifices and his own hard experience had slowly, painfully assembled. He asks himself honestly, would he have shown up? He would like to say yes. He wants to say yes. He believes he would have tried. But trying and showing up are not the same thing. And he has enough self-knowledge, has paid enough for it over the years, to sit in the uncertainty of that answer without flinching away from it. Arnetta knew him. She knew him better than almost anyone. and she made a calculation based on that knowledge. He is not sure, sitting in the honest room at 1 a.m. in his kitchen in Windermere, that her calculation was entirely wrong. This does not make it right. It does not dissolve the anger, or undo the years, or give Marcus back the father he didn't have. But it makes the situation human, genuinely, complicatedly human, in a way that blame alone cannot account for. Two people made choices in sequence, each one shaped by the one before it, and a child grew up in the space those choices created. That is the truth, the full one. Sitting in the honest room at 1 a.m., he can see it whole. The third room is fear. It is the smallest room and the hardest one to enter. He stands at its threshold for a long time before he goes in. The fear is specific, not vague. He has never been much bothered by vague fears, by the abstract uncertainties that paralyze some people. His fears have always been concrete, named, locatable. This one has a very simple name. What if Marcus doesn't want to know him? What if 21 years of growing up without a father has not left a vacancy but filled the space instead? Filled it with a mother who was more than enough, with a grandfather who came home from the paper mill every night with the same quiet dignity, with a life that is complete and functional and not missing anything that Shaquille O'Neal can provide? What if he shows up in Baton Rouge and knocks on that door, and Marcus opens it and looks at this enormous famous man who has never once been present and feels not relief but intrusion? Not the answer to a question but a complication to a life that had organized itself, carefully and successfully, around his absence. What if Shaq is, to his own son, exactly what Joseph Toney was to him? That is the fear at the center of the fear. He can see it clearly now, at 1:30 a.m., in the small, honest room. The thing he has talked about in every interview, about fatherhood and absence and what Philip Harrison meant to him. The thing he has turned into a kind of public testimony about what a father's presence means, might be the thing that makes Marcus reject him. Because Marcus has had 21 years to build a story about who his absent father is, and whatever that story is, Shaquille O'Neal showing up cannot help but complicate it. He thinks about Philip Harrison. He thinks about him the way he always thinks about him in the hardest moments. Not nostalgically, not with the soft focus warmth of grief that has settled into something manageable, but with the active, present quality of consulting someone whose opinion you trust completely. Philip died in February 2013, 11 years ago. Shaq was 40 years old and has not fully recovered from it, and does not expect to. Philip Harrison was his definition of a father. Not the man who gave him his genetics, but the man who gave him everything a father actually gives: presence, structure, the daily unremarkable devotion of showing up. What would Philip say right now? He knows exactly what Philip would say. Philip Harrison had one answer for every hard thing. He said it in driveways at 5 a.m. He said it in gymnasiums on Saturday mornings. He said it in the moments when Shaq wanted to stop, and the stopping felt justified and reasonable, and Philip made it feel like a category error. Nobody will work harder for you than you. It meant, there is no version of this where someone else does it for you. There is no waiting for the right moment or the right feeling or the right level of readiness. There is just the work and the choice to do it, and the person you become by making that choice over and over until it is no longer a choice but a fact of who you are. He thinks about a 21-year-old boy at Southern University studying audio engineering, pick-up basketball on Tuesdays and Thursdays, humming Missy Elliott in a back bedroom while his mother makes the hardest phone call of her life. A boy who has his hands. He thinks about what it means to be a boy who grows up asking one question and never getting the full answer. He has been that boy. He has written that question in a notebook with a flashlight in the dark. He has carried it for 52 years in the specific, durable way that unanswered questions from childhood get carried. Not loudly, not always consciously, but always present, always wait. He cannot give Marcus the 21 years back. That is the one true thing in all of this that has no solution, no remedy, no amount of money or intention or love that can address it. The years are gone. Marcus grew up. It happened. But Marcus is 21 years old, not 41, not 61. He is at the beginning of the part of his life where the people who show up still have time to matter in the ways that shape everything after. And Shaq, 52 years old, sitting in a kitchen at 2 a.m., with a cracked phone and a refrigerator hum, and the longest night of his life still stretching out ahead of him, understands with sudden, clarifying certainty that the only question Aisha actually asked is the only one that has ever mattered. Do you want to know your son? Yes. With everything, with all of it, with the anger and the fear and the grief, and the 21 years and the unanswered question in the notebook, and Philip Harrison in the driveway at 5 a.m., and Arnetta in the upper deck, not standing up, and a door closing. Softly, in 1992, and a voice humming in the background of a phone call on a Tuesday night in March. And all of it. Every piece of it. Yes. He calls Arnetta back at 5:15 a.m. The sky outside the kitchen window is the specific dark blue that comes just before the first gray edge of morning. Not night anymore, but not yet day. The color of the moment before things become visible. She answers immediately. He says, "Tell him. Tell him everything. And tell him I'm coming to Baton Rouge." She is quiet. One of her silences, the ones he learned to read 35 years ago in a cafe on Highland Road, the ones that are not empty but full, that contain more than speech does. Then she says, and her voice has in it something he has not heard in 18 years, something so familiar it lands like a physical thing against his chest. "He already knows your name, Shaquille. I made sure of that." He holds the phone for a long time after she hangs up. Outside the kitchen window, the dark blue is shifting. The first pale suggestion of morning is appearing at the edge of the Florida sky. Tentative, not yet committed, the way all new things appear before they decide to stay. He watches it come. He thinks, Marcus Deron Yardborough already knows his name. He thinks, a woman who owed him nothing spent 21 years making sure of that. He thinks, Philip Harrison would say, "Stop sitting in the kitchen." He gets up from the table, goes upstairs, does not sleep but lies down, stares at the ceiling of his enormous quiet house while the Florida morning arrives outside his window, slow and certain, and completely indifferent to what it is arriving into. At 7 a.m. he gets up, showers, and begins to pack a bag. He is not flying. He needs the hours that driving gives you, the 10 hours of I-10 westbound, through the Florida Panhandle, through Alabama, into Mississippi, into Louisiana. He needs the road the way he has always needed physical space, when his mind is working on something that cannot be rushed. He needs to be moving towards something, rather than waiting for it. He sends one text before he leaves, to a number he has had for 18 years and has never deleted. It says, "I'll be there tomorrow." Her response comes in 40 seconds. "I know." He picks up his bag, walks through his enormous quiet house, opens the front door into the warm Florida morning. He does not look back. He picks up his bag, walks through his enormous quiet house, opens the front door into the warm Florida morning. He does not look back. He drives a black Cadillac Escalade, not the most inconspicuous vehicle in the world, but the one that fits him without requiring the specific, undignified architectural compromise that most cars demand of a 7'1" man. He loads his bag in the back, adjusts the seat all the way to its rearmost position, which still leaves his knees closer to the steering wheel than he would like. He puts the address into the GPS, a residential street in the Scotlandville neighborhood, North Baton Rouge, and then turns the GPS off almost immediately. He knows the way. He drove these roads as a young man. He knows I-10 westbound the way you know the layout of a house you grew up in. Not from memory exactly, but from something more physical than memory. From the body's accumulated knowledge of a route taken enough times that it becomes automatic. He knows where the road widens through Tallahassee and where it narrows again approaching Pensacola. He knows the specific quality of the light over Mobile Bay, how it sits differently on the water than Florida light does, flatter and more diffuse. He knows the moment the landscape changes as you cross into Louisiana, how the air gets heavier, how the vegetation thickens, how the whole world becomes greener and more layered and more complicated in the way that Louisiana is always more complicated than whatever you were expecting. He drives without music for the first 2 hours. This is unusual. Shaquille O'Neal without music is like a kitchen without heat. Technically possible, functionally wrong. Music has been the other constant of his life, alongside basketball. The thing that runs parallel to everything else. The language he speaks when the other languages aren't sufficient. He has made albums. He has produced tracks. He has an ear for sound that his son has apparently inherited, and the thought of that, his son's ear, his son's instinct for music, the unbroken genetic thread of it, makes the silence of the first 2 hours feel necessary and right. He drives through it and lets it be what it is. Somewhere outside of Tallahassee, with the Florida Panhandle spreading flat and pine-dense on both sides of the interstate, he starts to think about what he is going to say. This is the problem he has been circling since 5:15 a.m., since the moment he told Arnetta he was coming, and has not been able to solve. He who has never been short of words. Who has spoken in front of arenas of 20,000 people without a note and without nerves? Who has sat across from Larry King and Oprah Winfrey and Charlie Rose and every major interviewer of the past 3 decades and navigated every question with the particular ease of a man who is genuinely comfortable being known? He cannot find the opening sentence. What do you say to a 21-year-old man who is your son and has never met you? What is the sentence that begins that conversation? The one that is honest without being overwhelming, that acknowledges the magnitude of the moment without performing it, that opens a door without demanding that the other person walk through it before they are ready. He runs through options the way he used to run through defensive schemes in film sessions, methodically, discarding each one as he examines it. I'm sorry. True, necessary, but wrong as an opener. It centers him. It asks Marcus to manage his feelings before he has even decided what his feelings are. I didn't know, also true, but incomplete in a way that is almost worse than a lie. He didn't know because of a sequence of choices, some of which were his. I want to be here now. The most important truth, but perhaps too much, too fast. Too much weight handed to someone who didn't ask to hold it. He cannot find the sentence. He stops once for gas at a Flying J truck stop just east of Pascagoula, Mississippi, where the air smells like salt water and diesel, and the Gulf of Mexico is theoretically somewhere to the south, in the hazy middle distance. He gets out of the car and stands next to the pump and stretches. The full, complicated stretch of a very large man who has been folded into a vehicle for 4 hours. And a teenager at the adjacent pump looks up from his phone, looks at Shaq, looks back at his phone, does a full double take, and says with the reverent disbelief of someone who cannot believe his own eyes, "Bro, are you?" Shaq says, "Yeah." The teenager says, "Can I get a?" Shaq says, "Yeah." He takes the photo. He is gracious about it, because he is always gracious about it. Because Philip Harrison raised him to understand that the people who give you their attention and their loyalty and their years of watching deserve the 30 seconds it takes to make them feel seen. He takes the photo and says something kind and means it. Then he gets back in the Escalade and keeps driving. He crosses into Louisiana on the I-10 bridge over the Pearl River just before noon, and something happens to him at that state line that he was not expecting. Something physical. A response in his chest. Not pain, not quite emotion, something more like recognition, like a compass settling, like the needle finding north after a long period of being too close to something magnetic to work properly. He is back. He has been back to Louisiana many times over the years, for business, for charity events, for LSU alumni functions, for the various professional occasions that bring a man of his profile back to the places that made him. But this is different. This is not a return for any of those purposes. This is a man driving toward the most important meeting of his life, on a Wednesday morning in March, through a state that built him, toward a city where he spent the years that shaped everything after. Baton Rouge appears on the horizon the way it always does from I-10. Gradually, the skyline assembling itself piece by piece over the flat Louisiana landscape. The state capitol building first, tall and Art Deco, and slightly improbable against the sky, then the Mississippi River Bridge, then the rest of the city filling in around those two landmarks, like a painting that requires its most distinctive elements placed before the background can be understood. He drives through downtown without stopping, takes the North Baton Rouge exits he learned when he was 19 years old, and playing at the Pete Maravich Assembly Center 8 miles south. Passes the Assembly Center without planning to. He doesn't choose to drive past it. The route just carries him close enough that he can see the roof from the overpass. And when he sees it, he feels the specific vertigo of a place that contains two incompatible versions of yourself simultaneously. The boy who arrived here in 1989, with a notebook under his bed and a hunger that had nowhere proper to go. The man driving past it now with a bag in the back and an address in Scotlandville and a sentence he still hasn't found. He drives north on Airline Highway, passes Southern University on his left, the large, historically black university where Marcus is in his junior year, where he studies audio engineering, where he plays pickup basketball on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Shaq slows down as he passes the campus without fully knowing he is going to. Looks at the buildings, the students moving between them on a Wednesday morning, backpacks and coffee cups, and the unhurried pace of a university in the middle of its regular semester. His son walks on that campus. His son moves through those buildings. His son eats lunch somewhere in there and argues about music with his classmates and does the ordinary, irreplaceable things of being 21 years old in a place he belongs. Shaq drives on. The Scotlandville neighborhood is north of the university campus, a residential area of single-family homes and old oak trees and streets named for the uncelebrated geography of a mid-sized southern city. The houses here are modest and well-maintained. People tend their yards. There are wind chimes on more than one porch. There is the specific atmosphere of a neighborhood where people have lived long enough to know each other, where the houses have histories, where the gardens have been worked by the same hands for 20 years, where the street has a personality of its own. He finds the address and parks across the street. The house is small by the standards of the houses Shaq has lived in for the past 30 years, but it is exactly what Arnetta described herself as: careful, intentional, every detail attended to. The garden in front is planted with the precision of someone who has been working it for years. Perennials that come back every spring, arranged by height and color with a quiet confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. The porch has been recently painted. There are wind chimes on the left side, copper ones, making a small sound in the March morning breeze. A car in the driveway, a 2019 Honda Accord, gray, has a Southern University parking permit hanging from the rearview mirror. He sits in the Escalade across the street from the house where his son lives, and he does not move for 11 minutes. He counts those too. He will do this. He will count the significant silences of this experience, time them, hold them as data, because it is the only way he knows to give the unmeasurable moments a shape he can carry. 11 minutes. He is not afraid. Exactly. Or he is afraid, but the fear is not the largest thing present. The largest thing present is something he does not immediately have a word for, a feeling that is grief and gratitude, and urgency, and stillness, all at once. That is the particular weight of a moment you have been approaching your entire life without knowing it. His phone buzzes on the passenger seat. A text. Unknown number. A different unknown number from Arnetta's. A new one, with the same 225 Baton Rouge area code. He picks it up. It reads, "She told me last night. I've been awake since 3 a.m. I'm inside. I don't know what I'm supposed to say to you." He reads it 3 times. His son has been awake since 3 a.m. His son, who learned his father's name last night from a woman sitting at a kitchen table, who has been carrying the fact of it through the dark hours of a Wednesday morning in March, the same way Shaq carried different facts through different dark hours in Florida, is inside that house right now, awake, waiting. He does not know what he is supposed to say. Shaq looks at that sentence for a long time. I don't know what I'm supposed to say to you. The honesty of it, the cleanness of it. No performance, no posturing, no attempt to seem more prepared or more composed than he is. Just the plain truth, delivered without decoration. He is, Shaq thinks, his mother's son. He types back slowly, with hands that are not entirely steady. He types and deletes twice. Then he writes what he actually means, which is the only thing that has ever worked in the conversations that matter. You don't have to say anything. I just need you to know, I'm not going anywhere this time. He sends it. He watches the screen. 3 dots appear. The typing indicator. They pause. Disappear. He breathes. They appear again. Then, okay. Just that. 1 word. 4 letters. The same single nod his mother gave at a birthday party when she was 5, and holding a juice box and deciding how much weight a person can carry, and keep moving. Okay. He gets out of the car. He crosses the street. The March morning in Baton Rouge is warm, in the particular way that Louisiana March is warm. Not summer yet, but already carrying summer's intention. The air thick with the smell of things growing, of the river somewhere to the south, making its long, patient way toward the Gulf. His footsteps on the sidewalk are careful and deliberate. He passes the garden. The copper wind chimes make their small sound. He reaches the bottom of the porch steps, and the door opens. Before he gets to it, before he has time to find the sentence he has been looking for since 5 a.m., before he has assembled any of the language he spent 10 hours of driving trying to locate, the door just opens. Marcus Duran Yardborough stands in the doorway. He is 6 feet 4 inches tall and still growing. The pediatric charts were right, and they are still growing right. And he stands in the frame of his mother's front door with the particular, unfinished quality of a young man whose body is still in the process of becoming what it will be. He has Arnetta's jaw and Arnetta's careful, measuring eyes. Those eyes that look at you with the patience of someone who is going to form a complete opinion before they share any part of it. He is wearing a Navy Southern University hoodie and holding a mug of coffee in both hands, close to his chest, the way people hold warm things when they need something to hold. And his hands. Arnetta was right. She has been right about this for 21 years, and she was right tonight, and she will be right forever. His exact hands. The same architecture. The same specific proportion of palm to finger. The same width across the knuckles. The same way of holding a mug with all 4 fingers, rather than the handle the way most people do. Because the handle was designed for hands that are not this size, and hands this size learn early to work around the design assumptions of a world built for smaller people. His father's hands. Holding a coffee mug on a porch in Scotlandville on a Wednesday morning in March. They stand there. The man who has filled every arena he has ever entered, and the boy who was built from the same material, looking at each other across the distance of 3 porch steps and 21 years, and every choice that assembled this specific, impossible, irreplaceable moment. Neither of them speaks. The wind chimes make their small sound. The March morning carries on around them. A bird somewhere in the oak tree at the edge of the garden. A car passing 2 streets over. The distant sound of the city doing its ordinary Wednesday things, completely indifferent to what is happening on this porch. Shaq is the one who moves first. He does not know what he intends to do when he starts moving. He has not planned this part. Has not planned any of this part, which is perhaps why it is the only part that feels entirely true. He moves, and what he does is put out his hand. Not for a handshake, not the formal, transactional extension of a hand that means hello, I am meeting you for the first time. Just his hand. Open, palm up, extended the way you extend a hand to someone standing at the edge of something steep, the way you offer it not as a greeting but as a fact. I am here, I am solid, you can take this if you need to. Marcus looks at the hand. He looks at it for a long moment, with his mother's careful eyes. Then he looks up at Shaq's face. Really looks. The way you look at something you have been trying to imagine your entire life and are now seeing in 3 dimensions for the first time, checking the real thing against the constructed version and finding them both familiar and completely foreign at once. Then he looks back down at the hand. He takes one hand off his coffee mug, sets the mug on the porch railing with the careful deliberateness of someone buying themselves one more second, and he takes it. They stand on the porch of a small, careful house on a street in Scotlandville, and they hold on. And then Marcus, 21 years old, raised by a woman with a spine of iron, raised to be solid, raised to give one nod and keep moving, makes a sound. Just one. Just a single breath that catches somewhere in the middle of itself, that comes out wrong in the way that breath comes out wrong, when the body has been holding something for longer than breath was designed to hold. And Shaq, 52 years old, Big Shaq, Big Diesel, all 4 rings, all $400 million, all of it, pulls his son into his arms. He holds him the way Philip Harrison used to hold him, the way you hold something that is both breaking and being repaired in the same moment. With both arms, with all of it, without reservation, and without an exit strategy, and without any version of it that is about anything other than the simple, absolute, non-negotiable fact of being present. Like love is non-negotiable. Because it is. Philip Harrison said that. Philip Harrison was right about everything. Inside the house, visible through the front window if anyone were watching, and no one is. Because this moment is private in the way that the most important moments always insist on being private. Arnetta Yardberg is sitting at her kitchen table. She has a scarf on her head. She is thinner than she was. There are shadows under her eyes that weren't there the last time Shaq saw her, 22 years ago, in a different parking lot in a different city. And the shadows tell a story about the months since January, that she delivered calmly over the phone last night, but that looked different as a physical fact. But she is smiling, not performing a smile, not the careful, composed expression she uses when she is managing something difficult. Actually smiling, the specific smile of a person who has just put down something very, very heavy. The smile of someone who has been carrying a weight so long that they forgot what their face does when the weight is gone. She is watching through the window. She watches her son take his father's hand on the porch in the March morning. She watches Shaq pull Marcus in. She watches the 2 of them hold on. And then she looks down at her own hands, folded on the table in front of her, the hands of a 52-year-old woman who raised a boy alone and loved him completely and made the mistakes she made and is fixing what can be fixed. And she says something, quietly, to nobody in the room, to the empty kitchen, to whatever it is you speak to when you are speaking to the weight of 21 years finally being set down. She says, okay, okay. 1 word. Twice. The same word her son just sent in a text message to the father he just met on the porch. It is, in the Yardberg family apparently, the word that means everything that is too large for other words. It is enough. The same word her son just sent in a text message to the father he just met on the porch. It is, in the Yardborough family apparently, the word that means everything that is too large for other words. It is enough. They stand on the porch for a long time. There is no clock on this. No agenda. No publicist waiting with a statement. No camera crew documenting the reunion for a special that will air in prime time. No carefully managed narrative being assembled for public consumption. This is not that. This will never be that. From the moment Shaq got in the Escalade in Windermere this morning, he made one decision that required no deliberation whatsoever. Whatever happens in Baton Rouge belongs to Baton Rouge. Whatever is built here gets built in private, in the ordinary, unhurried way that real things get built, without an audience, and without a deadline, and without anyone's permission. He will not tweet about it. He will not mention it on Inside the NBA. He will not allow it to become content. Some things are only themselves. This is one of those things. Eventually Marcus steps back, not pulling away, just finding his own footing again, the way you recalibrate after something physical that took you off balance. He picks his coffee mug up from the porch railing. His eyes are red at the edges, but his jaw is set with his mother's composure, and he is clearly, visibly working to reassemble himself into the version of himself he showed up in. The version that sent okay and opened the door and decided, somewhere in the sleepless dark hours of this Wednesday morning, that he was going to be present for whatever this was. Shaq respects it. He understands it completely, has spent 52 years doing exactly the same thing, knows the specific effort it takes to hold yourself together in a moment that is trying its hardest to take you apart. He says, "You want to go inside?" Marcus looks at him, considers, then says, "My mom made coffee." It is such a specific, ordinary, domestic sentence, "My mom made coffee," that Shaq almost laughs. Not from humor exactly, but from the relief of it, from the recognition that even in the most extraordinary moments, people reach for the ordinary. That coffee is what you offer when you don't know what else to offer. That some things remain constant across all circumstances. He says, "Yeah, coffee sounds good." They go inside. The house smells like coffee and something baking. Cornbread, Shaq will learn later, because Gloria Yardberg drove down from Shreveport when Arnetta told her what was happening and has been in the kitchen since 6 a.m., cooking with the focused intensity of a woman who processes difficult emotions through the production of food. Arnetta's mother, the choir director from Greater New Hope Baptist Church, the woman who raised 5 children on 2 non-negotiable beliefs. She is standing at the stove when they come in. She turns around. She is 71 years old, small and upright, and possessed of the specific authority that women who have survived everything tend to carry, the kind of presence that makes rooms quieter without raising a voice. She looks at Shaq. He looks at her. She says, "You're taller than the television makes you look." He says, "Yes, ma'am. I hear that a lot." She studies him for a moment with the unhurried thoroughness of someone doing a genuine assessment. Then she turns back to the stove and says, "Sit down, both of you." They sit. Arnetta comes in from the hallway. She has heard them come in, has given them the 30 seconds of kitchen threshold to find their footing before she appears. She is wearing a gray sweater and the scarf Shaq noticed through the window, a deep blue one, tied with the practiced ease of someone who has been doing this long enough to make it look effortless. She looks at Shaq first, then at Marcus, then back at Shaq. She says, "You drove." He says, "I needed the time." She nods. She understands. She has always understood the way he moves through things, that he processes in motion, that sitting still with an unresolved thing is not something his nervous system tolerates well. She understood it 35 years ago in a cafe on Highland Road, and she understands it now in her kitchen in Scotlandville, with her mother making cornbread at the stove and her son sitting at the table, across from the man whose hands he inherited. She sits down at the head of the table between them, and they begin. Not with the large things. That is the surprising part. That is the part Shaq will return to when he tries to describe this morning to Aisha later, the part he will find himself most moved by in retrospect. They do not begin with the 21 years, or with Arnetta's illness, or with any of the enormous, weight-bearing facts of the situation. They begin with small things. The way people do when the large things are too large to enter directly, and you have to come at them from the side, through the ordinary, through the everyday, through the things that don't require courage to say. Marcus asks him how long the drive took. Shaq says 9.5 hours. He says the stretch through Mississippi is underrated. People talk about Louisiana and Alabama, but Mississippi has a particular quality of landscape that he has always found unexpectedly beautiful. The way the pines give way to the river delta geography, the flatness of it, the way the sky gets enormous. Marcus says he has never been to Mississippi. Shaq says, "We can fix that." The sentence arrives without calculation. Just comes out. Simple, forward-facing, the assumption of a future built into the grammar of it, without drama or pressure. We can fix that. Not maybe someday or if things go well, or any of the hedged provisional language of two people who don't yet know what they are to each other. Just, we can fix that. Marcus looks at him. Something moves in his face. Brief, controlled, filed away. He nods once. Gloria sets cornbread on the table. She sets it down the way people set things down when they want you to eat them, which is without asking if you want them, and without waiting to be thanked. She pours coffee. She sits at the counter on a stool with her own cup and makes no attempt to be invisible, which Shaq respects enormously. Marcus asks, carefully, the way he asks everything, with his mother's architecture, about the drive from Orlando to Baton Rouge specifically. Not the small-talk version of the question. The actual question underneath it. You left this morning? Right away? Shaq says, I left as soon as it was light enough to drive. Marcus wraps both hands around his coffee mug. His father's hands around a mug. His eyes go to the table surface for a moment, then back up. He says, she told me last night, around 11, she sat me down at this table. He touches the surface of the table without seeming to realize he is doing it. Shaq says, how did you sleep? Marcus almost smiles. Not quite. But almost, he says, I didn't. Shaq says, me neither. And there it is. The first thing they have in common that they both know about. The first shared fact. It is small, and it is enormous at the same time, the way all first shared facts are. They were both awake all night, in different cities, in different kitchens, held open by the same information, walking through the same dark hours from different directions toward this table. Gloria says from the counter, without looking up from her coffee, that's family right there. Nobody in this family sleeps when something important is happening. She says it with the flat certainty of a woman stating a meteorological fact. It hangs in the kitchen for a moment. Marcus looks at her. Looks at Shaq. Shaq looks at Marcus. Something shifts. Slightly but perceptibly. The way light shifts when a cloud moves. The same room, the same table, the same people. But the quality of the air between them has changed by a degree or two in the direction of warmth. Arnetta watches it happen. She has her coffee cup raised to her lips, and she watches it over the rim with the specific attention of a social worker who has spent her professional life watching the exact moment when two people decide, consciously or not, to stop being strangers. She has seen it hundreds of times in her work. She has never seen it mean as much as it means right now in her own kitchen. She says, Marcus, tell him about the record. Marcus looks at her. A look that is 70% embarrassment and 30% something else. The thing that happens when someone who loves you accurately identifies what you actually want, without asking. He says, Mom, she says, tell him. He looks at Shaq with the careful eyes, the measuring ones, and then says, with the particular reluctant pride of a young person sharing work they have not yet decided is ready to be shared, that he has been working on a record. Not a project for school, a real one, A collection of tracks he has been building for 2 years in the campus recording studio, and in his bedroom. On a setup he assembled piece by piece, from saved money and second-hand equipment, a collection of 10 songs that sample and interpolate the sounds of early 90s Southern hip-hop and reconstruct them into something that is not nostalgic, but is in conversation with the past, that knows where it comes from, and has thoughts about where that leads. He has been working on it alone, hasn't shown it to anyone except his roommate at school, a sound engineering student from New Orleans named Darius, who keeps telling him it's ready and whom Marcus doesn't entirely believe, because Darius is generous to a fault about everything. Shaq listens to all of this. He listens the way he listened to Arnetta in a cafe on Highland Road in 1989, with complete attention, with no part of himself elsewhere, with the specific quality of presence that is rare in famous people and was always, even before fame, his most genuine gift. He is not listening to be polite. He is not listening because Marcus is his son and he owes him the performance of interest. He is listening because what Marcus is describing is genuinely, structurally interesting. Because the instinct to not imitate the past but argue with it is the instinct of someone who understands music at a level that goes beyond technical skill, who has internalized influence deeply enough to have opinions about it. He says, "What's the first track?" Marcus blinks. He was expecting. Shaq can see it, can read the expectation in the slight recalibration of his posture. Something more general. Something like "that's great," or "I'd love to hear it sometime," or any of the encouraging but non-committal responses that adults give to young people's creative ambitions to be kind without being accountable. He was not expecting a specific question about the work. He says, "It's called Scenic Highway, named after the street my mom's old apartment was on." Shaq goes still. He knows that street. Arnetta's apartment on Scenic Highway. He drove past it this morning. Did not plan to, but the route carried him close. He knows exactly the stretch of road that street name refers to. He knows the neighborhood, the quality of it, the specific northern Baton Rouge geography of it. His son named a song after the street where his mother lived when she found out she was pregnant with him. He does not say any of this out loud. He files it in the place where he files the things that are too large to speak immediately, that need time to settle into their full significance before language can approach them. He says, "I want to hear it." Marcus looks at him for a long moment. Then he gets up from the table, goes down the hallway, returns with a laptop and a pair of over-ear headphones, the good kind, studio grade, the kind you buy when you are serious about what you are hearing. He sets it up on the kitchen table, between the coffee cups and the cornbread, opens the file. His hands move over the trackpad with the ease of someone for whom this interface is as natural as breathing. He slides the headphones across the table to Shaq. Shaq picks them up, looks at them, puts them on, which requires a moment of adjustment, the headband extended to its maximum, the cups pressed against ears on a head that was not what the manufacturer had in mind when setting the size parameters. He settles them, nods. Marcus hits play. What comes out of those headphones? What fills the space between Shaquille O'Neal's ears in his son's mother's kitchen in Scotlandville, Baton Rouge, on a Wednesday morning in March 2024, is extraordinary. Not extraordinary in the way that anything produced by his son would be extraordinary to him. Extraordinary on its own terms. Extraordinary in the way that something is extraordinary when it knows exactly what it is doing and has the skill to execute the knowing. The track is built on a sample so deeply processed that it is almost unrecognizable. A loop from something early 90s. Something Shaq almost places but cannot quite. Chopped and reconstructed into a new melodic argument that retains the emotional DNA of its source, while becoming completely itself. Over it, a voice, Marcus's voice, though Shaq doesn't know this yet, speaks rather than raps, in the cadence of something between poetry and testimony, about a street, about a window, about a mother sitting at a table in the early morning, doing something private and enormous that her child almost sees but doesn't quite. It is about Arnetta. Shaq understands this within 20 seconds. It is about a child who has always almost understood something about his mother that she has never fully explained, who has lived his entire life in the periphery of a grief he could sense but not name, who has made a piece of music out of the not naming of it. It runs for 4 minutes and 11 seconds. When it ends, Shaq sits with the headphones on, and the track finished, and the silence of the kitchen coming back in around him. Gloria's quiet movement at the counter, the cornbread smell, the wind chimes outside doing their small thing in the March air. He takes the headphones off slowly. He sets them on the table. He looks at Marcus. Marcus is watching him with his mother's eyes, careful, measuring, ready to file whatever comes next in the appropriate internal folder, without reaction, without performed emotion, with the composure of someone who has learned that composure is a form of self-protection and has not yet learned that there are moments when self-protection is the wrong tool. Shaq says, "How long have you been making music?" Marcus says, "Since I was 12. But seriously, since I was 16. Shaq says, "Who taught you to build a track like that?" Marcus says, "YouTube, and Darius, and just listening. A lot of listening." Shaq nods. He thinks about a driveway at 5 a.m. He thinks about Philip Harrison saying, "Nobody will work harder for you than you." He thinks about what it means to teach yourself something because no one else is available to teach you. The specific, durable skill that self-teaching builds. The way it makes you not just competent but structurally independent, capable of solving problems the teacher never anticipated, because the teacher never had the chance to limit your methods. He says, "That track is ready." Marcus blinks. Shaq says, "Darius is right. I don't know Darius, but Darius is right. That track is ready, and you know it's ready. And you've been waiting for someone who actually knows what they're talking about to tell you it's ready, so you have permission to believe it." The kitchen is very still. Marcus looks at him for a long time. Then he says, quietly, so quietly that Shaq reads as much from the shape of his mouth as from the sound. "Yeah, just that. Yeah." The cousin of okay. The Yardbird vocabulary of the things too large for other words. Arnetta is not looking at either of them. She is looking at her coffee cup. Her jaw is working slightly, the way jaws work when you are keeping your face completely neutral, because the alternative is not neutral at all. Her mother, on the stool at the counter, has gone very still in the way that still people go stiller when something important is happening and they don't want to interrupt it with the sound of their own breathing. Shaq says, "I know some people in music, real people. People who matter in the current conversation, not just people who knew people 20 years ago." He pauses. "If you want that, when you're ready. No pressure, no timeline." Marcus says, "Why would you do that?" It is the most honest question he has asked. The one underneath all the other questions. The one that is really asking, who are you to me? What are the rules of this? What do I owe you, and what do you owe me? And how do we navigate a relationship that has no established grammar, no precedent in either of our lives, no map? Shaq thinks about how to answer it. He thinks about Philip Harrison. About a man who was not required by biology to show up and showed up anyway, every day, at 5 a.m., in every driveway of every city they lived in, without ever making the showing up into something that required Shaq's gratitude, or his acknowledgement, or his recognition. Philip showed up because Philip had decided that showing up was what you did. Full stop. Not a negotiation, not a transaction, just a decision, made once, honored every day. Shaq says, "Because you're my son, and because that track deserves to be heard." Those are two separate reasons, and they're both true, and neither one depends on the other. Marcus sits with that. He sits with it the way the Yardborough women sit with things. Thoroughly, without rushing, Without filling the silence with noise just because the silence is large. He inherited that too. The patience of it. The willingness to let something settle into its full shape before responding. Then he says, "Okay." There it is again. Okay. The word that means everything. Later, weeks later, months later, when Marcus tells his roommate Darius about that first morning, when he tries to put language to what it was like to sit in his mother's kitchen and meet the man whose hands he has always had, he will say that the thing that surprised him most was not the size of him, which is genuinely, almost comically enormous in a residential kitchen. It was not the familiarity of certain gestures, though that was disorienting in the way that mirrors in unexpected places are disorienting. It was not even the music conversation, though that was the moment something shifted from "this is happening" to "this is real." It was a smaller thing than any of those. It was that when Gloria set the cornbread on the table, Shaq reached for a piece with his right hand, broke it in half, and set one half back without being asked, without thinking about it, without performing consideration or demonstrating that he had been raised right, or making any of it into a gesture. He just broke it in half and put half back. And Marcus looked at his own hands and realized he does the exact same thing. Every single time. Has done it his entire life. Has never thought about it as a thing he does, until the man across the table did it first, and suddenly it became visible. Suddenly it became not just a habit, but a transmission, something carried in the body across a distance that the body was never supposed to cross. His father's hands. Breaking bread in his mother's kitchen. That was the moment. That small, unconscious, unremarkable moment. That was when Marcus Deron Yardborough understood, in the place below understanding where the real knowing lives, that this was not a visitation, not a famous man coming to fulfill an obligation and return to his life, not a story with a clean arc and a defined endpoint. This was the beginning of something, not a replacement for the 21 years. Nothing replaces 21 years. The absence was real, and the years were real, and the birthday parties, and the school events, and the Tuesday pickup basketball games, and the recording sessions, and all of it happened without this man, and will always have happened without him, and no amount of presence going forward changes that. Accounting. But a beginning, a real one. Shaq stays in Baton Rouge for 4 days. He stays at the Marriott on the river, not at the house, which would be too much too fast, and which Arnetta does not offer, and he does not suggest, because they are both people who understand that the right amount of a thing is as important as the thing itself. He comes to the house in the mornings. He and Marcus drive around the city in the Escalade, Marcus in the passenger seat, directing, pointing things out, narrating Baton Rouge the way a person narrates their hometown to someone they are slowly deciding to trust with it. He shows Shaq the recording studio on the Southern University campus, the small room with the good acoustic panels where Scenic Highway was built, track by track over 2 years of evenings and weekends. He shows him the pickup basketball court at Doherty Park, where he plays on Tuesdays and Thursdays. A full outdoor court, chain-link nets, the kind of court that has absorbed 10,000 games and shows it. The kind Shaq knows from 100 cities and 100 versions of himself. They play, not a game, just shooting. Just the two of them on an empty court on a Thursday morning, taking turns at various spots, the ball making the sound that a basketball makes on a cold morning, sharper than usual, more definite, each dribble a small report against the blacktop. Marcus can play. He is not a basketball player in any serious sense. His love is music, his skill is music, his future is music. But he grew up with the game the way anyone grows up with something that is in the air around them. And he moves on a court with the easy comfort of someone for whom it has always been recreational and joyful and completely without pressure. He has good hands. Of course he has good hands. They shoot for an hour. They don't talk much. They don't need to. There is a specific kind of communication that happens on a basketball court that requires no language, the reading of movement, the anticipation of where a body is going, the small adjustments made in response to what another person does with the ball and with their weight and with the space around them. It is a conversation conducted entirely in motion, and it is, for these two people on this particular morning, exactly the right kind of conversation to be having. At one point, Marcus catches a pass at the elbow, pump fakes once. A pump fake so instinctive and precise that Shaq, who has spent a career watching pump fakes, actually takes a half step and hits the mid-range jumper with a clean, unhurried release. Shaq says, "Where did you get that pump fake?" Marcus says, retrieving the ball, "I don't know, I've always had it." Shaq says nothing. He just smiles. He smiles the enormous, room-filling, unstoppable smile that has been on television for 30 years, that has appeared on magazine covers and in commercials and in the background of 10,000 photographs, but which right now, on this empty court in Doherty Park in North Baton Rouge on a Thursday morning, is not a public smile at all. It is just a father's smile. On the third evening, Shaq sits with Arnetta alone for the first time. Marcus is back at the university campus. He has classes, he has a life, and part of what both Arnetta and Shaq are silently careful about is not making Marcus feel like he has become a project, a situation to be managed, a person whose ordinary life must reorganize itself around the arrival of an extraordinary circumstance. They sit on the porch. The copper wind chimes. The March evening settling in, warm and slow, the Louisiana sky doing its extravagant thing with the colors of sunset over the western rooftops. Shaq asks her how she is really doing. Not the clinical answer. He has the clinical answer. He has read everything he could find about stage 3 ovarian cancer treatment protocols in the past 48 hours. Has already quietly made 3 phone calls to medical contacts he has in Houston and New York and Atlanta. Has already begun to think about what resources he can mobilize, what he can do, what doors his particular position in the world allows him to open. Not that answer, the real one, she tells him. She tells him about the chemo days, Tuesdays every other week, at Our Lady of the Lake. 3 hours in the chair with her mother or Denise sitting beside her, the specific exhaustion of it, the way it has changed her relationship to her own body. She tells him about the morning she sat in Dr. Fontenot's office and got the diagnosis and drove home alone afterward because she hadn't told anyone yet, and sat in the car in her own driveway for 20 minutes before she felt capable of going inside. She tells him that she is not afraid of dying. She says this plainly, the way she says everything, not bravely, not as performance, just as information. She says she has made her peace with the fact that she is mortal, has made it many times over, in many small ways throughout her adult life. What she was afraid of, the thing that turned the diagnosis from a medical fact into something that reached into the chest, was leaving Marcus without the complete truth. Leaving him with a story that had a gap in it, a room with a wall in front of it, a question that would outlive her ability to answer it. That's what scared me, she says. Not the dying, the leaving him without the whole thing. Shaq looks at the street in front of the house, the oak tree at the edge of the garden, its roots buckling the sidewalk slightly, the way oak tree roots always eventually buckle the sidewalk. A neighbor's dog walking its owner past the garden. The ordinary equipment of a Wednesday evening on a residential street. He says, "I'm going to need you to fight this." She says, "I know." He says, "Not for me, for him. He needs more time with you." For Forrester. She says, "I know that too." She looks at him. He looks at her. They are 52 years old. Both of them the same age exactly. She is 3 months older. Something she has always noted with a satisfaction he has always found disproportionate and completely charming. They are sitting on a porch in Baton Rouge in the March evening, and they are exactly as old as they are. And the 35 years between the cafe on Highland Road and this porch are real and permanent, and also, somehow, simultaneously, not the whole story. She says, "You're going to be good at this." He says, "I don't know that yet." She says, "I do. I know it the same way I knew you were going to be great before anyone else did. Same thing." He says, "You didn't know I was going to be great. You didn't stand up," she says, with the smile that is 35 years older than the last time he saw it. "I stood up on the inside." He laughs. The enormous, room-filling, unstoppable laugh. The one that has been on television for 30 years. It fills the porch and moves out into the March evening and disturbs the copper wind chimes and causes the neighbor's dog to look up from the sidewalk with momentary concern. Arnetta laughs too, and for a moment, just the length of a laugh on a porch in the Louisiana evening, they are 20 years old again. In a cafe on Highland Road, with powdered sugar on a sleeve, with a ceiling fan wobbling overhead, and 4 hours of conversation still ahead of them, and the whole long future of their lives not yet assembled into anything, still just potential, still just the open question of what two people who see each other clearly might become if they are brave enough and lucky enough and wise enough to find out. The moment passes, as moments do. They are 52. The wind chimes settle. The evening deepens. But the laugh stays in the air a little longer than it should, the way certain sounds do when they have found the right acoustic conditions. The porch overhang, the oak tree, the particular quality of a Louisiana evening that holds sound differently than other places hold it. It stays just long enough, but the laugh stays in the air a little longer than it should, the way certain sounds do when they have found the right acoustic conditions. The porch overhang, the oak tree, the particular quality of a Louisiana evening that holds sound differently than other places hold it. It stays just long enough. And then the evening moves on, the way evenings do, indifferent and faithful, carrying the day out with it and leaving the night in its place. The wind chimes settle into their small, irregular music. The neighbor with the dog passes back the other way, the dog now walking with the satisfied, purposeful stride of an animal whose constitutional needs have been met. A porch light comes on 2 houses down. Somewhere on the street, a child is being called in for dinner, the name repeated 3 times with increasing urgency, the way children's names always are, the ancient domestic rhythm of it unchanged by anything. Shaq drives back to the Marriott. He sits on the edge of the hotel bed, which is a king size and still not quite adequate, which is the story of every hotel bed in his life, and he thinks about what Arnetta said on the porch. "I stood up on the inside." He thinks about that for a long time, about what it means to register something completely, to be moved by it all the way to your foundation, and to choose not to show it on the outside. About how that is not the same as not feeling it. About how Arnetta Yardberg has been standing up on the inside for 35 years, in ways that he is only now beginning to fully account for. He thinks about Marcus. He thinks about the pump fake, about the cornbread broken in half and set back without thinking, about Scenic Highway playing through studio headphones in a kitchen in Scotlandville, a son's music built from a father's sounds without the son knowing where the gravitational pull was coming from. He thinks about Philip Harrison. He thinks, specifically, about something Philip said to him once that he has never repeated publicly, not in interviews, not on television, not in the autobiography. Something Philip said to him privately, in a gym in San Antonio, on a Saturday morning in 1987, when Shaq was 15 years old and furious at Joseph Toney, for a specific and private reason he has never discussed with anyone. Philip was rebounding for him. Shaq had missed 7 shots in a row, not from lack of skill, but from the specific, mechanical failure that happens when your mind is somewhere else entirely, while your body is trying to do something that requires complete presence. Philip retrieved each miss without comment, set up the next one, said nothing. After the seventh miss, Shaq threw the ball at the wall. Not at Philip. At the wall. The sound of it was enormous in the empty gym. Philip Harrison picked up the ball, walked it back to Shaq, held it out. He said, "The man who wasn't there doesn't get to live in this gym. You understand me? He doesn't get any of these hours. You give him these hours. You give him the only thing he never gave you. Your time. Don't do that." Shaq had never thrown another ball at a wall. He sits on the edge of the hotel bed and thinks about giving someone your time, about the hours, about what it means that Joseph Toney, a man Shaq has spoken about publicly, carefully, with the measured generosity of someone who has done real work on a real wound, lived in 0 of the hours that made Shaquille O'Neal who he is. That Philip Harrison got them all. That Lucille got them all. That basketball and music and the people who stayed got them all. And he thinks about what it means that Marcus Deron Yardborough is 21 years old, which means he has, if the actuarial tables are kind, and the choices are good, and the luck holds, perhaps 60 more years ahead of him. 60 years of hours, of Tuesday pickup basketball games and recording studio evenings, and cornbread in his grandmother's kitchen, and the pump fake he has always had, and the music that knows where it comes from, even when its maker doesn't. 60 years of hours. And Shaq is 52, which means he has, if the actuarial tables are kind and the choices are good and the luck holds, perhaps 30 more years. 30 years of hours to give to a 21-year-old who spent his first 21 without him. 30 years is not nothing. 30 years is, in fact, everything that remains available. And Philip Harrison taught him that you do not grieve what the available cannot be. You use what the available is. You show up in the gym. You rebound. You set up the next shot. You give your hours to the things and the people who are actually in the room with you. He picks up his phone. He texts Marcus. "You awake?" The response comes in 40 seconds. "Yeah." The sample on Scenic Highway. The loop underneath. What is that from? A longer pause this time. Shaq can imagine it. Marcus on his bed in his dorm room or wherever he is, surprised by the specificity of the question. Pleased by it in the way that artists are always pleased when someone hears the specific thing they put in rather than just the general effect. The response comes. It's from a song called "Warm It Up" by Criss Cross, 1992. I chopped it so deep you can barely tell. Most people don't catch it. Shaq looks at that text for a moment. The year he entered the NBA draft. The year he left LSU. The year a door closed softly on Nicholson Drive, and his life divided into a before and an after, that he has been living in the after of ever since. Criss Cross. 2 teenagers from Atlanta. The biggest thing on the radio that summer. Everywhere. Inescapable. The soundtrack of 1992 playing under everything. His son found a song from the year his parents' story broke and built something new from it without knowing why it called to him. He types, "I know that song." Marcus. Most people our age do. Our age, he said, our age. As if Shaq and Marcus share a relationship to 1992. As if they were both there, both shaped by it, both carrying something from it. They were. Just not in any way that either of them knew. Shaq, why that sample specifically? Another pause. This one longer. The pause of someone deciding how much to show. Then, I don't know exactly. It just felt right. Like it was already inside the song I was trying to make. Like I didn't choose it, it just was there. You know? Shaq reads that 3 times. Then he puts the phone down on the hotel bed and sits with the specific, enormous, quietly devastating weight of what his son just described. The experience of finding something and not knowing why you were drawn to it. The experience of a pull you can't account for, leading you to exactly the right thing. The experience of a signal you didn't know you were receiving, transmitted on a frequency you didn't know you were tuned to, from a source you didn't know existed. He picks the phone back up. He types, Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And then, before he puts the phone down, before he tries to sleep in the too small king bed in the Marriott on the river in Baton Rouge, he types one more thing. He types it slowly, with both thumbs, with the care of someone who wants to get the exact words right, because the exact words are the only words that will do. He types, "I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to just sit with it for a minute before you respond, okay? Marcus." Okay. I found out about you on Tuesday night. I drove here Wednesday morning. Not because your mom asked me to come fast. Not because there was any urgency about the timing. Not because I had a meeting in Baton Rouge anyway or anything like that. I drove here because the minute I heard your voice, before I even knew who you were, something in me already knew. And I have been thinking about what that means for 2 days. And I think what it means is this. Some things find each other, even when there's no path, even when everything that was supposed to connect them didn't work. They find each other anyway. You found that sample in 1992 without knowing why. I found my way to Baton Rouge in 9.5 hours without a GPS. Same thing. I think we are the same thing. He sends it. He puts the phone face down on the nightstand. He does not look at it for 10 minutes. He lies back on the bed and stares at the ceiling of the hotel room and breathes and lets whatever is going to happen happen. When he picks the phone back up, there is a response. It is 3 words. I think so. He sleeps better than he has in years. He goes back to Windermere on Saturday. He does not want to leave. That is the plain truth of it. The undisguised fact that he will acknowledge to Aisha when he calls her from the road, that he will sit with privately for the weeks after. He does not want to leave the house on the street in Scotlandville, does not want to leave the kitchen with the cornbread and the wind chimes, and Gloria on her counter stool making pronouncements about family, does not want to leave the pickup court at Doherty Park or the recording studio at Southern University or the specific, irreplaceable texture of these 4 days that have rearranged everything. But Marcus has a life. He has classes on Monday and a session booked in the studio on Sunday afternoon with Darius, who has apparently been waiting with the patience of a saint for Marcus to decide the record is ready. He has the ordinary, irreplaceable business of being 21 years old in the middle of a semester, and Shaq has spent enough time thinking about what it means to have someone show up and demand too much of your available space to make that mistake with his own son. He leaves Marcus with 3 things. The first is his personal phone number, not the public-facing one, not the one that goes to his assistant, not the number that gets calls from agents and journalists and restaurant owners. His actual number. The one Aisha has, the one Philip Harrison had, the number of the person inside the institution. The second is a name and a direct phone number for a music producer in Atlanta, a man named Jerome Whitfield, who has worked with 4 artists in the past 3 years that Marcus would recognize immediately, who owes Shaq a favor from 2019, that Shaq has been waiting for the right moment to call in. He says, "Call him when you're ready. Tell him I sent you. He'll listen to the record." He says it without pressure, without the energy of an obligation being created. Just a door being held open, and the person on the other side being allowed to decide when and whether to walk through. The third thing he leaves Marcus is harder to describe because it is not an object or a contact or a resource. It is a posture, a way of standing in relation to something. He says, on the porch, on Saturday morning, with his bag in the back of the Escalade and the drive back to Florida ahead of him, I know I missed a lot. I know that's not a small thing, and I'm not going to pretend it is, or try to make it smaller than it is, to make either of us more comfortable. I missed a lot. That's real and it's permanent, and I'm going to have to live with that, and so are you. Marcus is listening, the careful eyes, the composure. Shaq says, "But I want you to know, and this is the thing I need you to actually hear, not just be polite about, you didn't miss a father. You had a mother who was more father than most people's fathers. You had a grandfather who came home from that paper mill every night for 40 years and showed you what it looks like when a man decides to stay. You were not without. You were different than some. That's not the same as without. Marcus is quiet for a moment. Then he says, "She said almost exactly that to me once, when I was 12. Shaq nods. He is not surprised. He is, in fact, specifically unsurprised in the way you are, unsurprised by things that confirm what you already knew about a person. He says, "Your mom is the smartest person I have ever known. And I know some very smart people." Marcus almost smiles. Fully this time. Not the controlled, almost smile of someone managing their response to an unfamiliar situation, but an actual smile, young and sudden and completely unguarded, the smile of someone who has heard the right thing said about someone they love, by someone whose opinion, it turns out, they have already decided matters. He has Arnetta's smile. Of course he does. Shaq gets in the Escalade, adjusts the seat, starts the engine. The GPS plots the route east, 10 hours back to Windermere, back to the quiet house and the black granite countertop, and the tile floor, with the faint mark where a phone cracked against it on a Tuesday evening in March. Marcus stands on the porch. The wind chimes. The morning. He raises one hand as Shaq pulls away from the curb. Not a wave exactly, more an acknowledgement, a recognition. The gesture of one person confirming to another that they have been seen. Shaq raises a hand back through the open window. He drives east on I-10, and this time he plays music. Shaq Diesel, the 1993 album, which he has not listened to in years, and which sounds different now. Sounds like something that was always carrying a message he didn't know he was sending. A signal on a frequency he didn't know was being received, in an apartment on Scenic Highway in North Baton Rouge, by a woman who was tired and alone and not yet ready to admit what she was holding on to and why. He drives through the flat, extravagant Louisiana landscape with the windows down and the music up, and the March air coming in warm and green-smelling, and specific in the way that Louisiana air is always specific, particular, ungeneralizable, belonging to itself and nowhere else. He is thinking about the phone call. He is thinking about that voice in the background, the thing that made the phone fall, the thing that started all of it, that unconscious, unaware humming from another room on a Tuesday evening that arrived through a phone line and did something to him that no amount of warning or preparation could have done, that bypassed every defense he had assembled over 52 years, and landed directly in the place where the real knowing lives. He asked Arnetta about it, that second night on the porch. He asked her to walk him through it, the logistics of it, the accident of it. Why Marcus was there, why Marcus was humming that song, why any of it happened the way it happened rather than some other way. She told him Marcus wasn't supposed to be home. He had been scheduled to be at the campus recording studio until 9 p.m., a session with Darius that had been on the calendar for 2 weeks. But the studio's main mixing board developed a technical fault in the afternoon, the kind of electrical issue that shuts the whole room down, and the session was canceled at 5:30. Marcus texted his mother to let her know he was coming home early, a text that Arnetta received while she was sitting at the kitchen table with the phone in her hands, having been sitting there for 2 hours already, having written and rewritten and thrown away the version of this call she was going to make. She read his text, looked at the phone, understood that the window she had been carefully preparing to climb through was about to close, that Marcus coming home meant the conversation she needed to have first, before telling Marcus, before doing anything, was going to have to wait for another day, another window, another round of writing and rewriting and throwing away. She dialed before she could talk herself out of it. Marcus came home 12 minutes into the call. She didn't hear him come in. The front door is quiet. She has been meaning to fix the hinge that used to squeak. The squeak was the system. Without it, the door opens silently, and people appear without warning. He came in and went directly to his room, which she also didn't hear, because she was concentrating on the phone call with the specific, total focus of someone saying the most important thing they have ever said to the most important audience they have ever had. She didn't know he was home until she heard him humming, and the song, Get Freak On, was not random, but it was not deliberate either. It was the song he had been sampling for 3 weeks for a new track he was working on. A track that was not on the record. A new thing. A next thing. A piece he was building in the spaces around Scenic Highway and the other 9 songs. He had the melody in his head, the way you have a melody in your head when you have been working with it obsessively, unavoidably, involuntarily, humming it without intending to hum it. The way songs colonize you when you have been inside them long enough. He was humming it because it was simply there. Because it was living in him the way music lives in people who are made for it. The way it takes up residence and plays itself, whether you have given it permission or not. Arnetta did not plan any of it. The timing of the call. The open door. The song. She planned none of it, and she could not have planned it, and the fact that it assembled itself into that specific configuration on that specific Tuesday evening in March is either the most extraordinary coincidence of an already extraordinary story, or it is something else, something that resists the language of coincidence, that requires a different vocabulary, one that most people deploy only in private and only when they are very sure of their audience. Shaq drives east on I-10 and thinks about the vocabulary for it. He thinks about Philip Harrison in a gym in 1987, saying the man who wasn't there doesn't get any of these hours. He thinks about Arnetta in a cafe in 1989, saying you know exactly why you're angry. You just haven't decided if you're allowed to be. He thinks about a boy named Marcus in a recording studio building songs from sounds he didn't know his father made, following a pull he couldn't name to a source he hadn't been told existed. He thinks about what it means that the voice in the background was just a boy humming in the dark, not calling out, not searching, not sending a signal intentionally to any destination. Just a young man in his room on an ordinary Tuesday evening, alive in his music, the way people who are made for something are alive in it, unaware that the sound of his aliveness was traveling through a phone line to a kitchen in Florida and opening a room that had been closed for 18 years. Some things find each other. That is the only vocabulary that fits. Not fate. Fate is too passive, too much like something that happens to you, rather than something you participate in. Not coincidence. Coincidence is too small, too accidental for something with this much architecture. Something in between. Something that requires both the willingness of the people involved and the specific, unrepeatable configuration of a Tuesday evening in March. A broken mixing board, a silent door hinge, a song stuck in a young man's head, a woman who had been writing and rewriting for 18 years and finally ran out of reasons not to dial. All of it necessary, none of it sufficient alone. He crosses back into Florida as the afternoon light goes golden and long over the panhandle. The specific amber light of a Florida late afternoon that is different from Louisiana light and different from anywhere else, that belongs to this geography and no other. He has been driving for 6 hours. 4 more to Windermere. He calls Aisha. She picks up on the second ring. He talks. He tells her everything. Not the summary version, but the full version. The cornbread and the headphones and the pump fake and the porch and Arnetta's smile and Marcus's 3-word text at midnight and the crisscross sample from 1992. And all of it, the whole 4 days, laid out in order from the Escalade on the Florida highway, with the windows down, and the late afternoon coming in. Aisha listens without interrupting. When he finishes, she is quiet for a moment in her way. The thoughtful quiet. The one that means she is choosing words rather than reaching for them. Then she says, Philip would have loved him. Shaq drives for a moment. In the golden light. He says, yeah. She says, He would have been up at 5 a.m. with that boy. Shaq says, and his voice does something on the word that it doesn't do very often. I know. I'm going to do that for him. Aisha says, I know you are. They stay on the phone for another hour, just talking. Just the way people who grew up in the same house and carry the same losses and love each other's. Other without complication talk. Easily. Without agenda. With the specific comfort of a relationship that requires nothing to be performed. He gets home to Windermere at 9 p.m. He parks in the driveway, sits in the Escalade for a moment, looks at the house. His enormous, quiet house, the one that has felt too large for too long, the one whose silence he has been constructing his life around for years without fully admitting that is what he was doing. He goes inside. He goes to the kitchen, the black granite countertop, the tile floor where the phone cracked on a Tuesday evening that is now 1 week ago and 60 lifetimes ago simultaneously. He looks at the floor. There is a faint mark where the phone hit. Not a crack in the tile. The tile is durable, it held. Just a mark. A small evidence of impact. The kind of thing you would miss if you weren't looking for it. He gets a glass of water, stands at the counter, drinks it. His phone buzzes. He looks at it. Marcus? Made it back okay? Shaq reads it twice. His son in Baton Rouge, on a Saturday evening, in his dorm room, or his mother's kitchen, or the campus recording studio, has sent a text to check that he made it home safely. 4 days. 4 days, and his son is checking that he made it home. He types back, yeah, just walked in. Marcus, good. Then, after a pause, I started a new track today. Named it after a bridge on I-10. The one over the Pearl River, the Louisiana state line. Shaq reads that. He reads it again. The bridge over the Pearl River. The place where, driving west on Wednesday morning, something in his chest had settled like a compass, finding north. The state line. The place where he understood, without words, that he was going towards something rather than just away from something else. His son was in Baton Rouge all day Saturday. He did not cross that bridge. He has not been to that bridge in any relevant context. He chose it from a map, from a name, from whatever internal compass points him toward the things that carry the right weight for music. The same compass, Shaq types. That's a good bridge. Marcus. Yeah, it felt right. He puts the phone down on the black granite countertop. He looks at the kitchen, the quiet. The large house doing its large house silence around him. The refrigerator hum. It feels different tonight, not smaller. The house is still the house, still enormous, still built for a life that has more square footage than any one person needs. But the silence has a different quality. It is not the silence of a room with no furniture. It is not the silence of something missing, of an emptiness noticed every time you walk in. It is the silence of a house where someone is going to visit, where there is a room that could be a room for someone, where the quiet is not permanent but temporary, the quiet of a Wednesday night that will eventually, in its own time, in the right way, at the right speed, become something noisier. He thinks about Marcus at the recording studio on Sunday, about Jerome Whitfield in Atlanta, and what happens when a 21-year-old kid with his father's hands and his mother's ears calls that number and plays Scenic Highway through the phone. About a pickup basketball court at Doherty Park on a Tuesday morning, and the specific clean sound of a basketball on cold blacktop. About cornbread broken in half and set back without thinking. About copper wind chimes, and a garden tended with real care, and a woman on a porch in the Louisiana evening who stood up on the inside 35 years ago and has been standing ever since. About a voice humming in the background of a phone call. Just a boy in his room on a Tuesday evening, alive in his music, not knowing anyone could hear him, not knowing that the sound of him was finding its way home. Here is the thing about that voice. The thing that Shaq comes back to, alone in his kitchen in Windermere on a Saturday night, After 650 miles of driving and 4 days in Baton Rouge and the longest week of his life. It was not calling out. Marcus was not reaching for anything when he hummed that song in his room. He was not sending a message. He was not, in any conscious or deliberate sense, doing anything other than being himself in an ordinary moment, humming a song he had in his head, alive in the private, unperformed way that people are alive when they think no one is watching. That is what found its way through the phone. Not a cry for help, not a search, not even a signal exactly, just the sound of a person being real. And it was enough. It was more than enough. It was the only thing that could have done what it did, that could have reached through the careful, constructed, 52-year-old architecture of Shaquille O'Neal's defenses and gotten to the place where the real knowing lives. Not because it was extraordinary, because it was completely, entirely, unmistakably ordinary. Just a boy, just a song, just Tuesday evening in a room in Baton Rouge. Just the sound of his son being alive. And that sound, that ordinary, unguarded, unintentional sound, was the thing that opened 18 years of silence in 4 seconds. That cracked a phone screen on a kitchen floor. That sent a man to his car at sunrise and down I-10 for 9.5 hours, without a GPS, because he knew the way. That put 2 people with the same hands on a porch in Scotlandville and gave them the beginning of something that has no clean name yet and does not need one. Some things find each other, even when there is no path, even when everything that should have connected them didn't, even after 18 years of silence, and 600 miles of distance, and a door that closed softly in 1992, and every choice and consequence that assembled itself in the years after that closing. They find each other anyway. Sometimes it takes a broken mixing board, a silent door hinge, a song stuck in a young man's head, a woman who ran out of reasons not to dial. Sometimes it takes all of that just to make the window. And then someone has to be brave enough to climb through it. Arnetta climbed through it. Shaq drove toward it for 9.5 hours. Marcus opened the door before Shaq reached the top step. None of them knew, in the moment, that they were doing something irreversible. That is always the thing about the moments that change everything. They don't arrive wearing signs. They arrive as ordinary Tuesdays, as broken equipment, as a phone buzzing on a granite countertop, as a voice humming in the background of something else entirely. They arrive as the small sounds of people being alive. And if you are quiet enough, if the house is quiet enough, if you have lived long enough in the right kind of stillness to recognize the signal when it finally comes, you hear them. You hear your son humming in the background, and you do not look away. You do not ignore the number. You pick up. And that is the story of the phone call that changed everything. A woman who found the courage to dial after 18 years. A man who got in the car and drove 9.5 hours without hesitation. A young man who opened the door before his father even reached the top step. And a voice humming in the background that started it all. Sometimes the most important moments in life do not arrive with warning. They arrive as an ordinary Tuesday night, as a number you almost ignored, as a sound from another room that your heart recognizes before your mind catches up. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from right now? Drop your city and your country in the comments below. We read every single one, and there is something special about knowing that this story is reaching people all over the world at the exact same moment. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone you should call, something you should say, a door you left open that maybe deserves a second look, hit that like button right now. It takes 1 second and it tells us that stories like this one are worth telling. And if you believe that kindness is worth spreading, that the world gets a little better every time someone chooses to show up instead of walk away, subscribe to this channel. Join the people who come here for stories that actually mean something. There is another story waiting for you on your screen right now. Click it. We will see you there.